Heidi Plank, a 39-year-old mother, mysteriously vanished in Los Angeles on October 17, 2021. Plank was last seen leaving her son's football game in Downey, California. Her ex-husband, Jim Wayne, became concerned when she failed to pick up their son 3 days later, as had been scheduled, leading him to report her missing on October 20th, 2021. The case took a strange turn when Plank's dog was found wandering on the 28th floor of a high-rise apartment complex in downtown Los Angeles, just hours after she left the football game. Surveillance footage captured her entering the building, but she was never seen leaving. Plank had no known connection to the building, further deepening the mystery. Authorities searched the building but found no immediate signs of her whereabouts. However, forensic evidence discovered inside the building later led police to suspect that she may have died there. One theory circulating is that Plank attended a drug-fueled party in the building on the night she disappeared. Witnesses suggested that she may have suffered a fatal overdose during the event, and there is speculation that partygoers may have disposed of her body through the building's trash chute. This theory gained traction when authorities conducted an extensive search at the Chiquita Canyon landfill, where garbage from the building was dumped. However, no human remains were ever recovered, and this theory remains speculative. Another aspect complicating the case is Plank's professional life. She worked as a controller for Camden Capital Partners, a firm under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, more commonly known as the SEC, for financial fraud. Her boss, Jason Sugarman, was implicated in a $43 million fraud scheme, and some, including Jim Wayne, believe that her disappearance may be tied to her knowledge of illegal activities at the company. Just days after Plank was last seen, Wayne received a phone call asking him about Sugarman, heightening suspicion that her professional connections might have played a role in her vanishing. Notably, Heidi's advised some of her friends that her name was on a lot of papers, and she implied that she may be having some sort of tax problems in the future. That said, any connection between her disappearance and Camden Capital Partners is merely speculative at this point. Although police have continued to pursue leads, including reviewing surveillance footage and conducting searches, the case remains unsolved. Plank's remains have never been found, and her family continues to seek closure nearly 3 years after her disappearance. The Celebrity Number 6 mystery was one of the internet's most fascinating cases of lost media that finally reached resolution in the last couple of days. Since I assume most of you don't know that this mystery has been solved yet, I'm still going to cover it here. This mystery began in 2020 when an image of a fabric containing a collage of celebrities, each based on real-life source photographs, surfaced online. While most of the celebrities depicted, including Adriana Lima, Josh Holloway, and Jessica Alba, were quickly identified, the identity of one person, nicknamed Celebrity Number 6, remained elusive for years. The fabric, produced around 2008, featured these stylized portraits in a pop art style. But the origins of Celebrity Number 6 puzzled internet sleuths. Over the years, dedicated Reddit communities, such as the r/Celebrity Number 6 subreddit, were formed to pool collective knowledge, clues, and research in an effort to identify her. Speculation ran wild, with virtually every theory believing the mystery woman might be a prominent actress or model from the 2000s in keeping with the others on the fabric. Some theories even proposed that Celebrity Number 6 could in fact be male. Several fairly well-known figures were considered, such as the model Olga Sarova and actor Taylor Kitsch. Despite this, no one was able to find a direct match for years. In 2024, the mystery reached its climax when a user named Indigo Room made a breakthrough. Indigo Room was able to confirm that the image of Celebrity Number 6 could be traced back to Letitia Sarda, a Spanish model. This user found another photograph of Letitia Sarda which appeared like it could be from the same photo shoot, and reached out to the photographer. The discovery was confirmed when a photographer acknowledged that he had taken the original photograph for a 2003 issue of a Spanish magazine called Woman Number 162. This discovery ended a years-long search, satisfying thousands of internet detectives who had pored over every potential lead. Letitia Sarda herself has since come out and acknowledged that celebrity number 6 was her. Notably, in true Reddit-style Indigo Room was driven from the subreddit by a Reddit moderator who accused Indigo Room of generating the image using AI and forging the emails from the photographer. When it comes to Reddit moderators, I guess you could say you get what you pay for. I say that Reddit should double or even triple their base pay. Excalibur, the legendary sword of King Arthur, is one of the most iconic symbols in Arthurian legend, representing kingship, divine right, and heroism. Its name, believed to be derived from either Latin or Welsh, has come to signify more than just a powerful weapon wielded by King Arthur, and is now known worldwide. The story of Excalibur is most famously linked to two key Arthurian legends: the Sword in the Stone and the Lady of the Lake. The former, popularized in the 12th century poem by Robert de Boron, describes how Arthur, a seemingly unknown boy, pulls the sword from a stone, proving his divine right to rule Britain. According to this legend, only the true heir to the throne could achieve this feat, and Arthur's success marked him as the rightful king. However, in other arguably more popular traditions, Excalibur is not the sword drawn from the stone. This version states that the sword in the stone, which Arthur initially uses, shatters in battle, prompting the wizard Merlin to lead Arthur to the Lady of the Lake. She presents him with Excalibur, a magical sword with supernatural powers. Excalibur is often depicted as having extraordinary qualities, with some traditions emphasizing that its blade could blind enemies with its brilliance, or that it granted invincibility to its wielder. Its scabbard, rather than the sword itself, was considered even more powerful in some accounts. According to some legends, Arthur was told that as long as he had the scabbard, he could not be mortally wounded. Another significant aspect of Excalibur is its connection to water, a recurring theme in Celtic mythology, where lakes and rivers often serve as entrances to the other world. The sword's delivery by the Lady of the Lake and its return to the waters upon Arthur's death reinforces the idea that Arthur's reign was divinely sanctioned. As he lay dying after the Battle of Camlan, his famous final battle, Arthur instructed one of his most trusted knights to return Excalibur to the lake. According to legend, this knight, who differs depending on the telling, was tempted to keep Excalibur for himself, but eventually threw it back into the water. While Excalibur is widely regarded as a product of medieval romance, it may draw from earlier myths. Some scholars believe it shares characteristics with swords in Celtic mythology, such as the Irish sword Caladbolg. These swords often carried similar magical traits, such as unbreakable blades and the ability to vanquish enemies effortlessly. The search for the historical Excalibur often revolved around finding a real-life basis for the legendary sword of King Arthur to increase a British ruler's legitimacy. Notably, in 1191, the historical Excalibur was supposedly discovered at Glastonbury Abbey. However, rather than keeping this sword in Britain, Richard the Lionheart gave it as a gift to King Tancred of Sicily, a Norman ruler of Sicily, and distant relation of Richard. Unfortunately, King Tancred died very soon after in 1194, and the fate of this version of Excalibur remains entirely unknown, having been lost for over 800 years. Personally, I think if I was given Excalibur by Richard the Lionheart, I would have made more efforts to ensure that it was kept in a safe place. Count Saint Germain, a mysterious European figure from the 18th century, has been the subject of intrigue for centuries due to his wide ranging talents and elusive origins. Born either in 1691 or 1712, the Count remains an enigma. His true identity has never been definitively established. Some theories suggest he might have been the illegitimate son of Prince Francis Rákóczi of Transylvania, while others propose more unusual origins, linking him to ancient and mystical traditions. Saint Germain's talents and knowledge spanned across multiple disciplines. He was well versed in languages, reportedly fluent in French, Italian, and German, and able to communicate in several others, such as English and Spanish. His proficiency in the arts was also remarkable. The Count was an accomplished violinist and composer, contributing to musical performances across Europe. His performances, combined with his flair for eccentricity, captivated European high society. Courtiers often described him as both entertaining and peculiar, noting his insightful conversations on philosophy and science. Beyond his musical abilities, Saint Germain was also known for his expertise in alchemy, a pursuit that played into his larger-than-life reputation. He allegedly claimed to have discovered the secret to immortality, which led to further mythologizing of his character. These claims were reinforced by his seeming agelessness. Throughout his life, witnesses remarked that the Count appeared strikingly youthful, even as the years passed. His association with alchemy and the occult grew over time, with some later occultists identifying him as a spiritual master, or even in immortal mystical figures like Christian Rosenkreutz. One of the most notable periods in Saint Germain's life was his time in the French court of King Louis XV. By 1748, he had earned the favor of the king, who employed him on secret diplomatic missions. Saint Germain's apparent ability to navigate the complex world of international politics, combined with his scientific and alchemical pursuits, earned him a reputation as a man of mystery. Despite his secretive nature, he managed to gain the trust of influential figures, yet he always maintained an air of enigma, refusing to reveal his origins or even his real name. The Count's association with major European figures of his time only added to his mystique. He is mentioned in the memoirs of the infamous quote-unquote adventurer Giacomo Casanova, who described him as a captivating conversationalist, full of stories that seemed designed to astonish. Saint Germain's connections were not limited to political and social elites. He was also linked to esoteric circles, particularly the burgeoning movements of mysticism and occultism. In later years, some occultists, such as those affiliated with the Theosophical Society, claimed that Saint Germain was an ascended master. They stated that he was a being who had transcended human limitations and now worked for the spiritual advancement of humanity. This belief persisted well into the 20th century, where groups like the Saint-Germain Foundation continued to revere him. The foundation, founded in the 1930s, promoted the idea of Saint Germain as a spiritual guide who had mastered the secrets of the universe. Saint Germain's death in Germany in 1784 did little to quell the legends surrounding him. Some believe he faked his death and continued to live in secrecy, while others claim he truly discovered the key to eternal life and remains alive to this day. These myths have been perpetuated in various forms, from occult teachings to New Age spiritual movements, where he is often revered as a symbol of eternal wisdom and mystery. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, taking a second to gently remind you to like and subscribe, and to hit the notification bell. Also remember, if you want to take it to the next level, you can do so with the Patreon or with a YouTube membership. Benefits include occasional early access to new content, access to some of my earlier videos which are no longer available otherwise, and shout-outs. The Tatzelwurm is a cryptid rooted in the folklore of the Alps. particularly in the regions of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Described as a reptilian beast with feline characteristics, this cryptid has sparked fascination and fear for centuries. While its origins are obscure, stories of the Tatzelwurm have persisted from the 18th century onwards, frequently portraying it as a dangerous, snake-like creature that resides in the Alps. The creature is typically depicted as having a serpentine body, ranging from 5 to 7 feet in length, with a cat-like head and short forelimbs. Accounts vary, but many describe it as venomous, sometimes capable of emitting poisonous fumes. The Tatzelwurm's ferocity is emphasized in tales where it attacks livestock or even humans. One of the earliest known encounters is that of a farmer named Hans Fuchs, who in 1779 reportedly saw two of these creatures in the mountains. According to legend, Fuchs was so terrified by the sight of the Tatzelwurm that he suffered a heart attack shortly after returning home, but not before recounting the encounter to his family. He described the beast as having sharp teeth, a serpent-like body, and clawed limbs as well as the signature cat head. Sightings of the Tatzelwurm continued into the 19th and early 20th centuries. In 1828, a farmer allegedly discovered a half-eaten corpse of the creature, which had supposedly been scavenged by crows. While no physical evidence of the Tatzelwurm has been conclusively verified, sporadic reports of sightings have kept the legend alive. In 1934, the legend gained further attention when a photograph purported to show a Tatzelwurm. This image, captured by a man named Balkan, showed a stubby, snake-like creature among rocks, and was widely discussed but ultimately discredited. In my view, this creature has little in common with the usual descriptions of the Tatzelwurm, as it lacks the cat-like head that defines the creature. Cryptozoologists have speculated on the possible existence of the Tatzelwurm, proposing that it could be an undiscovered species. Common suggestions include a giant salamander or another amphibian-type creature adapted to the cold alpine environment. Some have suggested that the creature might hibernate during the winter and emerge in warmer months, which would explain the sporadic nature of sightings. In modern times, the Tatzelwurm has become a symbol of regional identity, representing the nature of the Alps. Originating in the mid-15th century as playing cards in Europe, tarot cards evolved over time into a tool for spiritual guidance and fortune-telling, particularly from the late 18th century onwards. Today, they are widely associated with mystical and occult practices, serving as a bridge between the material and spiritual worlds. A typical tarot deck consists of 78 cards, which are divided into two main groups, the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana consists of 22 cards, each depicting significant life events, spiritual lessons, and archetypal energies. These cards are believed to hold the most profound and influential messages in a reading, often symbolizing major life transitions or spiritual insights. Some of the most well-known cards in this group include the Fool, the Magician, and the World, each carrying unique symbolism and meaning. The minor arcana, on the other hand, comprises 56 cards that are divided into 4 suits: wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Each suit is associated with a different element and represents various aspects of daily life. The minor arcana cards are often seen as reflecting more mundane, yet still significant matters such as relationships, finances, and personal challenges. The belief in the powers of tarot cards is deeply rooted in their use for divination. Practitioners of tarot, known as tarot readers, use the cards to gain insight into the past, present, and potential future of an individual. The cards are shuffled and drawn in a specific spread, with each position in the spread representing different aspects of the individual's life. The reader then interprets the cards based on their positions, the images depicted, and the traditional meanings associated with each card. One of the most critical aspects of tarot reading is the role of intuition. While the cards have traditional meanings, the interpretation is highly subjective and relies heavily on the reader's intuitive abilities. A skilled tarot reader combines their understanding of the card's symbolism with their intuitive insights to provide guidance that is tailored to the individual's unique situation. The power of tarot cards, therefore, lies not just in the cards themselves, but in the connection between the reader and the person receiving the reading. The act of shuffling the deck and drawing the cards is seen as a way of aligning with the energies of the universe, allowing the reader to tap into a deeper level of consciousness. This process is believed to reveal truths that might not be apparent through ordinary means of understanding. Evidence for this includes the fact that statistically, no one will ever see the same tarot drawing twice, and thus every reading is entirely unique. Tarot cards are often viewed as tools for tapping into the subconscious mind and the collective unconscious, a concept popularized by Carl Jung. Jungian psychology suggests that the symbols and archetypes found in the tarot resonate with the universal human experience, making them powerful tools for self-reflection and personal growth. For example, the Fool card, which represents new beginnings and potential, can be interpreted as an encouragement to embrace new opportunities without fear. Further, this card is generally regarded as a card of infinite potential. In addition to their psychological significance, tarot cards are also associated with esoteric traditions and occult practices. Some believe that the cards are connected to ancient wisdom from civilizations such as Egypt, or with Christian or Kabbalistic mystical traditions. Tarot cards are also used in rituals and magical practices, where they are believed to enhance the practitioner's connection to the spiritual realm. The symbolism within the cards is thought to carry specific energies that can be harnessed for various purposes, such as manifesting desires or protecting against negative influences. In the summer of 2007, the city of Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine, experienced a string of brutal incidents that shocked the local community and the world at large. Over the span of several weeks, 21 residents of the city fell victim to violent acts committed by a group of individuals who would later be known as the Maniacs. This group comprised 3 young men, Viktor Sayenko, Igor Suprunyuk, and Alexander Hanja. Their crimes seemed to lack any clear motive and targeted a broad spectrum of the community, including children, the elderly, and homeless individuals. The attackers appeared to choose their victims randomly, and the methods used were particularly savage, predominantly involving blunt objects like hammers and steel construction bars. The severity of the attacks left the victims unrecognizable, and in some instances, there were signs of extreme desecration. On the night of June 25, 2007, a chilling series of events unfolded. Yekaterina Ilchenko, a 33-year-old woman, was attacked while returning from a friend's place and struck unexpectedly by Suprunyuk with a hammer. She was discovered by her mother early the next morning, and unfortunately this was just the start of the horror. Within an hour, Roman Tatarevich was found brutally slain. He had been sleeping on a bench which was located shockingly right across from the local prosecutor's office. The violence escalated on July 1st, with Yevgenia Grishenko and Nikolai Serchuk found in Novomoskovsk, and continued on July 6th in Dnipro. That night, Igor Nechvoloda, a young ex-soldier, was savagely attacked on his way home. Nearby, Yelena Shram, a night guard, was ambushed by Suprunyuk, who concealed a hammer beneath his shirt, striking her down before disposing of evidence with her own clothes. Later, Valentina Hanja, a mother of 3, became another victim of this senseless violence. These acts left a community in terror. marking a dark series of events driven by inexplicable cruelty. The initial break in the case came with the attack on the two boys from Pidorodna on July 7, 2021. One of the boys, Vadim Lyakov, survived and escaped, later helping police to create sketches of the attackers. His testimony, combined with descriptions from other witnesses, aided law enforcement in connecting the dots between the separate incidents, which eventually led to the arrest of the maniacs. However, sadly, they were not brought to justice until July 23, 2007, 2.5 weeks after the big break in the case. In the meantime, the maniacs claimed the lives of 13 more innocent people. The investigative effort was substantial, with more than 2,000 law enforcement officers involved from all over the country. However, the final breakthrough came when one of the suspects attempted to sell a mobile phone belonging to one of the victims. The personal backgrounds of the three young men were explored during the investigation and subsequent trial. They had known each other since school and shared some common fears and interests that, disturbingly, evolved into torturing animals and eventually escalated to their violent spree. The evidence presented at trial included photographs and videos that portrayed their inhuman acts, further substantiating their guilt. Ultimately, the legal proceedings culminated on February 11, 2009, with Supranyuk and Sayenko receiving life sentences for their crimes. Hanja, who was found not to have participated directly in the violent acts, was sentenced to 9 years for robberies that occurred prior to the crime. Unfortunately for the families of the victims, the videos of the crime scenes which came out at trial were leaked onto the internet and quickly went, quote, viral on shock websites. As for why they did it, well, the answer seems to be that they had a simple fascination with cruelty and senseless violence. Some individuals, like the maniacs, embody the purest form of evil and malevolence. Their actions, devoid of empathy and reason, challenge our understanding of human nature. The legend of the Griggstown cow is an obscure piece of New Jersey folklore, centering on a mysterious bovine. This creature was said to haunt the floodplains of the Millstone River and the Griggstown Lock along the Delaware and Raritan Canal. For 3 decades, the so-called ghost cow was reported by numerous residents and visitors who claimed to have seen the animal, often in foggy conditions. These sightings were typically fleeting, and no solid evidence such as tracks or droppings was ever found, further adding to the mystery surrounding the creature. Some blurry photographs were allegedly taken of the creature, but I've been unable to find these photographs online. As no dairy farms remained in the area since the 1970s, the presence of a lone, ownerless cow seemed improbable, leading many to dismiss the sightings as mere urban legend. The story took a surprising turn on November 23, 2002, when an employee from the New Jersey Water Authority reported seeing the cow stuck in a ravine near the canal. When rescuers arrived, they discovered an elderly, blind black and white bull matching the description of the ghost cow. This discovery shocked those who had long doubted the cow's existence. It was concluded that this animal had been living undetected in the floodplain for decades, surviving by foraging and avoiding human contact since the decline of the dairy farms in the area. Unfortunately, the bull was in poor health and severely weakened from age and its ordeal. Efforts were made to rescue the animal, but due to its frail condition, a local veterinarian decided that the most humane course of action was to euthanize it. Sightings of the ghost cow ceased after the finding of the Griggstown cow, providing very strong circumstantial evidence that witnesses had been seeing this bull for decades. The Griggstown cow is of interest to cryptozoologists because it highlights how a large animal can remain undetected for decades. Some cite this as support for the possibility that other large elusive creatures may also exist hidden in plain sight. Despite being in a relatively populated and accessible area, the bull lived undisturbed in the Griggstown floodplains for nearly 30 years, evading human detection until its discovery in 2002. The God-worshipping society, founded by Hong Xiuquan in the mid-19th century, was a religious movement in China that combined elements of Christianity with Chinese folk traditions. It played a pivotal role in the development of the Taiping Rebellion, one of the largest and deadliest civil conflicts in world history. The society's teachings and practices not only aimed at religious reform, but also carried a strong political message against the ruling Qing dynasty. The group's eventual transition from a religious sect to a full-fledged rebellion was motivated by a unique blend of spiritual beliefs, social grievances, and millenarian aspirations. The God-worshipping society began with Hong Xiuquan's spiritual visions. After failing multiple attempts at the imperial examinations to become a bureaucrat, Hong experienced a series of mystical visions in which he believed he was appointed as a younger brother of Jesus Christ. Notably, and keep this in mind for later, these examinations had a sub 1% pass rate, and passing the examination was the equivalent of having quote-unquote made it in society. Also, it's important to keep in mind that this was a less than 1% pass rate of people who had devoted their entire lives to studying for this exam. For all but the wealthiest families, this required the extended family and beyond to place resources into a talented young person to begin studies at an early age. But I digress. Hong's interpretation of Christianity was influenced by Protestant missionaries in China, but took a syncretic turn. He blended his understanding of Christian monotheism with Chinese religious elements, particularly a focus on Shangdi, the traditional high god of Chinese culture. These teachings were deeply intertwined with a message of justice, positioning Hong as a divine leader who could guide his followers toward a utopian society. Hong developed the society as a platform to oppose the social injustices suffered by the poor. Initially, their message spread among marginalized groups, such as the Hakka Chinese people, who faced discrimination in Qing society. The society attracted thousands of converts, including miners, laborers, and small farmers. It grew in popularity largely due to the promise of a better life, free from oppression by local elites and the Qing government. The God-worshipping society fostered a sense of community through its stringent religious and social structure. Members were required to abandon traditional Confucian and Buddhist practices in favor of the society's Christian-inspired beliefs. The group also emphasized collective responsibility, establishing communal living arrangements and a common treasury where wealth was shared among all members. The society's ideology demanded strict moral behavior, including chastity and sobriety, creating a form of religious discipline intended to purify the believers and prepare them for the coming era of divine rule. A distinctive aspect of the God-worshipping society's theology was its millenarian vision. Hong preached that the world was corrupt, ruled by demons, i.e., the Qing dynasty, and that God had chosen him to lead his followers in the creation of a new, divinely sanctioned kingdom. His concept of the heavenly kingdom of great peace was a utopian vision that would eventually come to define the movement. This kingdom was intended to be a theocratic state that would replace the Qing dynasty, governed by principles of equality and justice. As the God-worshipping society expanded, it began to take on a more militant character. By 1847, Hong Xiuquan had amassed a large following, which were then armed and trained to resist local authorities. Conflicts between the society's members and Qing officials escalated, leading to the Jintian Uprising in 1851. This marked the beginning of the Taiping Rebellion, as the society formally declared war against the Qing government. calling for the establishment of the Heavenly Kingdom. Hong's declaration of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in 1851 was not just a religious proclamation, but also a political move. It positioned the society as a direct challenge to the Qing authority, framing the struggle as one between the forces of good, the God worshippers, and evil, the Qing. The rebellion gained momentum, and by 1853, the Taiping forces captured Nanjing, China's southern capital, which they declared as the capital of their divine kingdom. Under the rule of the God-worshipping society, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom adopted radical policies that sought to restructure Chinese society. The leadership promoted gender equality, abolished foot binding, and redistributed land among peasants. The state also strictly regulated behavior according to religious laws, banning practices such as gambling. These reforms were accompanied by strict authoritarian control, which did not ingratiate the new subjects of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom to their new monarch. Despite early successes, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom struggled to maintain cohesion. Internal power struggles emerged between different factions within the leadership. Further, multiple leaders other than Hong began to claim to communicate directly with God, undermining Hong's authority. These divisions, coupled with external conflicts with the Qing military, weakened the Taiping forces. After more than a decade of intense fighting, the rebellion was finally crushed by Qing forces, aided financially and militarily by Western powers in 1864. The question of whether Hong Xiuquan truly believed in his divine visions, or whether he was motivated by a hunger for power, has been subject to significant debate. Hong's spiritual experiences, especially his claim of being the younger brother of Jesus Christ, appear sincere at the outset, with some claiming that this was likely the result of mental break. According to this theory, Hong, after failing the bureaucratic examinations, collapsed mentally upon the realization that he had let down his entire family and extended family who were relying upon his success. However, it's speculated that he recovered from this experience and continued to play the role of the divine king of the Taiping Kingdom as a way of increasing his power. Naomi Bolivar, a 21-year-old recent graduate of Brigham Young University, had just returned to Florida to be with her family. She vanished on February 11, 2021, during what was supposed to be a routine walk at the Ann Kolb Nature Center in Hollywood, Florida. Naomi, who was on the autism spectrum, had returned to Florida after completing her degree in plant and wildlife ecology, intending to start her professional career. On the day of her disappearance, Naomi left her parents' home around 4 p.m. Surveillance footage captured her boarding a bus, and she eventually arrived at the nature center. She sent a Snapchat selfie to a friend from the park's observation tower around 6 p.m., but shortly after that, communication ceased. Her phone stopped responding, and her family became alarmed when she did not show up for a scheduled Zoom Bible study later that evening. An immediate search effort was launched after Bolivar's parents reported her missing. Authorities traced her phone's location to a spot on South Ocean Drive, about 3 miles from the Nature Center, where it pinged near Hollywood Beach at around 10 p.m. that night. Despite this lead, no other evidence of her whereabouts has been found. There has been no activity on her phone, bank accounts, or social media since her disappearance, and she left home without her ID or money. The circumstances surrounding Naomi's case are particularly troubling. While authorities initially speculated that she may have left voluntarily, her friends and family firmly rejected this notion. Bolivar was described as responsible, close to her family, and unlikely to simply walk away without any communication. Those who knew her well emphasized that she wouldn't engage in reckless behavior or put herself in danger unnecessarily. Further adding to the peril is the fact that Naomi was noted to have limited social ability due to her autism. Some have speculated that her good nature, combined with her autism, may have meant that she was unable to tell if someone had malicious intent until it was too late. As the investigation dragged on without any significant leads, private investigators were brought in to assist. At one point in March 2021, it was reported that Naomi's phone briefly reconnected to the network and sent apparent text messages to 3 of her friends before it was turned off again. Due to the ongoing investigation, it doesn't appear that the nature of these messages has been disclosed by authorities at this time. However, this development failed to provide any tangible clues regarding her whereabouts. Despite extensive search efforts, which included canvassing the local area with flyers, utilizing search dogs, and combing through the Ancolb Nature Center, no trace of Bolivar has been found. The authorities and private investigators have expressed frustration over the lack of evidence pointing toward foul play, though the possibility of an abduction has not been ruled out entirely. Anyone with information about Naomi's disappearance is urged to contact the Hollywood, Florida Police Department. The concept of the third eye is a widely recognized symbol across various spiritual traditions, representing an inner vision, heightened awareness, and a gateway to higher consciousness. This esoteric concept is most commonly associated with the chakras in Hinduism and the pineal gland in modern interpretations. The third eye is traditionally seen as a mystical and esoteric concept in various spiritual traditions, particularly in Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, the third eye is associated with the Ajna chakra, located between the eyebrows, which is considered the center of intuition, intellect, and spiritual insight. This chakra is believed to connect individuals to their inner selves in the universe, enabling them to perceive realities beyond the physical world. It is often symbolized by a bindi, a mark on the forehead representing the divine vision of inner reality. Buddhism similarly associates the third eye with mindfulness and awakening, a state where one transcends ordinary perception to achieve spiritual enlightenment. The third eye is seen as the path to realizing the true nature of existence, free from the illusions of the material world. In other cultures, the third eye has also been recognized in different forms. For instance, in Egyptian mythology, it is often compared to the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection, royal authority, and good health. In Celtic traditions, there's evidence Druids believed in a metaphorical eye that granted insight into the unseen and the true reality of the world. In more contemporary interpretations, particularly in the West, the third eye is often linked to the pineal gland, a small endocrine gland in the brain. The pineal gland has been a subject of fascination due to its connection with light, sleep regulation, and the production of melatonin. Some holistic practitioners and spiritual teachers believe that the pineal gland, when activated, can lead to the awakening of the third eye, thereby enhancing intuition and spiritual insight. The association between the third eye and the pineal gland gained popularity in the 20th century, especially through the works of New Age thinkers and theosophists. This belief has led to various practices aimed at opening the third eye, such as meditation, visualization, and certain yoga practices that are designed to stimulate this gland. In many spiritual traditions, opening the third eye is seen as a crucial step towards achieving enlightenment. It involves transcending the limitations of the ego and the material world to gain a deeper understanding of the self and the universe. Joshua Guimond, a 20-year-old political science student at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, disappeared on November 9, 2002. On that night, Joshua attended a small party at the Metencourt dormitory on the St. John's University campus. At around 11 p.m., he left the gathering to go to the bathroom and was never seen again. Initially, his friends assumed he had walked back to his apartment at St. Maur House, but he never arrived. The next day, when Joshua missed a scheduled mock trial practice, his friends and family began to worry, and a search was initiated. The immediate response to Joshua's disappearance included extensive searches of the campus and surrounding areas, including Stumpf Lake, which was near the last known location of Joshua. Some believed that Joshua might have accidentally fallen into the lake while walking home, possibly under the influence of alcohol, but this theory has been widely disputed. Despite multiple dives and the use of sonar equipment, no trace of him was found. Scent tracking dogs led investigators to the lake, but again, nothing was uncovered. Another early theory was that Joshua had simply walked away from his life, but this was quickly dismissed by those who knew him. Joshua left behind his car, keys, and wallet, and there were no signs that he intended to leave permanently. As the investigation continued, more sinister possibilities were considered. One theory suggested that Joshua might have been struck by a vehicle and that the incident was covered up, possibly by members of the university community. However, there is no concrete evidence to support this, and it remains speculative. There were also speculations about a possible connection between Joshua's disappearance and the broader scandal at St. John's Abbey, where monks had been implicated in various scandals. Some believe that Joshua, who was reportedly disturbed by these revelations, might have been targeted for what he knew or had discovered. In 2022, on the 20th anniversary of his disappearance, investigators released new information, including a series of photos found on Joshua's computer. These photos, mostly of men, were believed to be connected to Joshua's online activities. It was revealed that Joshua had been using online chat rooms and dating services. Investigators have suggested that he may have arranged to meet someone on the night of his disappearance, which could have led to foul play. This theory, like the others, has yet to be proven, but it remains a focus of the ongoing investigation. Joshua's case drew comparisons to other disappearances of young men in the region around the same time. Christopher Jenkins and Michael Knoll, both college students, went missing and were later found dead in nearby bodies of water. While these cases were initially thought to be accidental drownings, Jenkins's death was later reclassified as intentional. This led to speculation that a serial predator might be targeting young men in the area. Some have speculated that these attacks may have been works of the unproven smiley face killer, who some speculate targets college-aged men around the United States. However, law enforcement has not confirmed any direct connection between these cases and Joshua's disappearance. Despite various theories and the release of new evidence, no definitive answers have been found. Authorities are hopeful that renewed attention might finally bring answers to this enduring mystery. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Stearns County Sheriff's Office. Spelling on the Stone song. Spelling on the Stone is a 1988 song released at a time when rumors about Elvis Presley faking his death were rampant and widely believed. This song became a central piece in the ongoing Elvis is Alive phenomenon, fueled by the belief that Elvis had not passed away, but was instead living in secret. The song was released by LS Records, a label run by Lee Stoller, who claimed to have received the recording from an anonymous source under unusual circumstances. According to Stoller, the song was delivered by a man in a limousine who gave it to his daughter, Tammy, in August 1988. The song's mysterious origins added to the aura of conspiracy that already surrounded Elvis Presley's supposed demise. One of the key points that fueled speculation was the title Spelling on the Stone, which refers to a detail on Elvis Presley's tombstone. His middle name, Aaron, was spelled incorrectly on the headstone, which led some to believe that the tombstone was deliberately incorrect, signaling that the real Elvis was still alive. However, further research indicates that while Aaron was spelled unconventionally on his birth certificate, in life he spelled it to reflect standard spelling of the biblical name Aaron. For absolute clarity, his birth certificate spelled it with only one A, while the headstone included the standard two A's. The song itself, sung by an uncredited artist with a voice eerily similar to Elvis, is narrated from the perspective of someone who faked their own death. The release of Spelling on the Stone generated significant attention, particularly on radio stations across the United States. In New York City, listeners who heard the song reportedly called the station, claiming to have seen Elvis alive. The same reaction occurred in New Orleans, where the program director noted receiving dozens of calls from listeners after the song aired. However, not everyone was convinced. Some radio stations refused to play the track, labeling it a hoax, and even Priscilla Presley, Elvis's former wife, dismissed the idea that the voice on the recording could be Elvis. Notably, Priscilla Presley went on record calling it a, quote, very cruel hoax. Despite the controversy, Spelling on the Stone made its way onto the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, where it peaked at number 82 in early 1989. This chart success, albeit modest, cemented the song's place in the Elvis legend. Over the years, the identity of the vocalist has been a topic of much debate. Some sources attribute the performance to Dan Willis, a musician with a history of recording for LS Records, although this has never been definitively confirmed. Some believe it was a calculated move by LS Records to cash in on the Elvis is alive craze, while others think it was an elaborate prank intended to fuel conspiracy theories. The song, whether seen as a hoax or a sincere tribute, has become a lasting part of the Elvis mythos, inviting speculation and discussion to this day. The Bass Strait Triangle is an area off the southeastern coast of Australia, notorious for unexplained disappearances and mysterious occurrences, similar to the more famous Bermuda Triangle. This body of water, which separates the Australian mainland from Tasmania, has been the site of numerous incidents over the past century, leading to its reputation as a region of intrigue and speculation. The Bass Strait has a long history of maritime and aviation mishaps, starting as early as the 19th century. One of the earliest notable incidents occurred in 1920 when the SS Amelia J, a ship navigating these waters, disappeared without a trace. This disappearance was followed by the loss of 2 military aircraft sent to search for it. In 1934, the Bass Strait claimed the Miss Hobart, a commercial airliner carrying 9 passengers and 2 pilots. The aircraft vanished in perfect weather conditions, and no wreckage was ever found despite extensive search efforts. Adding to the mystery, the crew reported strange noises and an unexplained aerial machine before losing contact. Another similar incident involved the Lowena in 1935. This aircraft, en route from Melbourne to Tasmania, also disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Some wreckage was found, including seats and parts of the plane, but no conclusive explanation was ever provided. These early 20th century events set the stage for the area's eerie reputation. Perhaps the most famous case associated with the Bass Strait Triangle is the disappearance of Frederick Valentich in 1978. Valentich was a 20-year-old pilot on a training flight over the Bass Strait when he reported to air traffic control that he was being followed by an unidentified flying object. Describing the object as metallic and emitting a green light, Valentich's last transmission was cut off by a strange noise, after which he and his plane were never seen again. This incident sparked widespread theories, including alien abduction, due to the bizarre details and the absence of any wreckage. Several theories have been proposed to explain the disappearances in the Bass Strait Triangle. Some attribute the incidents to the dangerous and unpredictable weather patterns in the region, which is known for sudden storms and rough seas. The strong winds and unpredictable conditions can quickly turn treacherous, especially for small aircraft and ships. However, the more mysterious explanations involve potential extraterrestrial activity. There have been reports of unusual lights in the sky over the Bass Strait, which some link to UFOs or other unexplained phenomena. While many of the incidents can be explained by natural factors like treacherous weather or human error, the more mysterious aspects continue to be speculated. As with the Bermuda Triangle, skeptics point out that any heavily trafficked area of the ocean is likely to have what some people may view as an uncanny amount of unusual activity. Also, stay tuned because I'll be covering the disappearance of Frank Valentich further later in this video. The death of Eugene Izzy. Eugene Izzy, a crime novelist from Chicago, led a life and career that reflected the gritty realities of the city he loved. Born on March 23, 1953, Izzy spent much of his life in the working-class neighborhoods of Chicago, using his experiences to fuel his writing. He began his writing career in the late 1980s, and his novels often depicted the tough streets and organized crime of Chicago. Izzy wrote under his name and the pseudonym Nick Gaetano, producing several novels that, while never achieving blockbuster success, earned him a loyal readership. On December 7, 1996, a scene straight out of one of Izzy's novels played out in downtown Chicago. A passerby on Michigan Avenue looked up and noticed a figure hanging from the 14th floor window of an office building. The figure was later identified as Eugene Izzy. The discovery set off a whirlwind of speculation and mystery that remains unresolved. When authorities entered Izzy's office, they were met with a perplexing scene. Izzy, who weighed around 220 pounds, was found hanging by a rope tied to a steel desk inside the locked office. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, and his pockets contained brass knuckles, a can of bear spray, and almost $500 in cash. Additionally, there was an 800-page manuscript on his computer detailing a plot eerily similar to the circumstances of his own end. The manuscript reportedly involved a Chicago-based author who meets a violent end at the hands of Indiana militiamen. This led to speculation that Izzy may have been researching or infiltrating such a group, and that his end might have been an orchestrated act to resemble his manuscript's plot. Some suggested that Izzy, known for his thorough research and willingness to immerse himself in dangerous environments, might have attracted the wrong kind of attention. Despite these suspicions, the official conclusion from the Cook County Coroner's Office was that Izzy ended himself. However, the theatrical nature of his end, combined with the specific details from his unfinished manuscript, left lingering questions. Many of Izzy's friends and colleagues found it hard to believe that he would have chosen such a public and dramatic manner of exiting life, especially given his known disdain for attention. Some have suggested that Izzy might have been acting out a scene from his novel to better understand the emotions and physicality involved, only for things to go tragically wrong. Over the years, various theories have circulated, including the possibility that Izzy's end was staged by someone else, or that it was an elaborate performance gone awry. Yet none of these theories have been substantiated with concrete evidence, leaving the mystery of Eugene Izzy's final moments unsolved and open to interpretation. In August 2021, Angelia Lynn Johnston, also known as Angeli, held a press conference at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Angeli, a self-proclaimed retired Defense Intelligence officer, claimed that she had encountered extraterrestrial beings in a hidden base within the Mojave Desert on January 21, 2018. According to her, she was introduced to two men, one of whom, identified only as Wayne, led her to a hidden tunnel in the desert. Inside this tunnel, Angeli claimed to have encountered two different extraterrestrial beings who communicated with her telepathically. These beings, she said, resided in a hidden base within the mountain, a claim that has sparked much controversy. During the press conference, she announced plans to lead a team of scientists, including an astronaut, to the location of the alleged encounter. The goal was to bring back concrete evidence of extraterrestrial life. However, this expedition never materialized, leading to increased skepticism about her story. The story took another twist when Wayne and his partner, Tricia, publicly disputed Angeli's account. They stated that while they had met Angeli and discussed UFOs, there was no tunnel, no extraterrestrial encounter, and no missing time as she described. They also mentioned that Angeli had consumed an extremely potent cannabis oil during the visit, which they suggested might have influenced her perceptions. Despite these contradictions, Angeli has remained steadfast in her belief that she encountered extraterrestrial beings. Adding to the complexity, Angeli has also claimed that the Earth will undergo a significant transformation by 2027, a prediction that added a prophetic dimension to her narrative. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy taking a few seconds to promote my work. Remember to like and subscribe and also share this video with your friends and family. The Lost Gospels. The term Lost Gospels refers to a collection of early Christian writings that were not included in the canonical New Testament. These texts were written between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, a period when early Christianity was still defining its doctrines. These texts were discovered in various locations, with significant finds such as the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt in 1945, which included the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Judas. These Gospels were often buried or hidden by Christian communities who viewed them as heretical or feared persecution. The Lost Gospels differ significantly from the canonical Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. For instance, the Gospel of Thomas is a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, many of which emphasize self-knowledge and inner enlightenment. This gospel reflects Gnostic influences, a belief system that emphasizes esoteric knowledge as the path to salvation. The Gospel of Mary presents Mary Magdalene as a prominent disciple who receives secret teachings from Jesus, challenging the traditional gender roles within early Christianity. This gospel has fueled discussions about the role of women in the early church and their potential leadership positions. The Gospel of Judas offers a radically different portrayal of Judas Iscariot, not as a betrayer, but as a close confidant of Jesus who acted on Jesus' instructions. This text challenges the conventional narrative of Judas's role in Christian theology and offers a more nuanced view of his actions. The Lost Gospels have been the subject of intense scholarly debate. Some scholars argue that these texts were excluded from the New Testament because they did not align with the emerging orthodoxy of the early church. Others suggest that the Lost Gospels were simply less popular or not widely circulated, leading to their exclusion. Some scholars argue that the texts that were included in the canon were those that supported the growing institutional structure of the church and its teachings. The discovery of the Lost Gospels has had a profound impact on our understanding of early Christianity. These texts reveal the diversity of beliefs and practices among early Christians and offer alternative perspectives on familiar biblical figures and events. The Hittite Plague, an epidemic that struck the Hittite Empire in the mid-14th century BC, remains one of the most mysterious and impactful events in ancient history. The Hittite Empire was a formidable force in the ancient Near East, stretching across modern-day Turkey, northern Syria, and beyond. During its peak, the empire was engaged in constant warfare and diplomacy with other major powers such as Egypt and the Assyrians. However, The empire was struck by a plague that would last over 2 decades. The exact origin of the plague is still debated among historians. Some theories suggest that it was introduced into the empire through military campaigns, particularly after the Hittites captured Egyptian prisoners of war. Others propose that the plague may have spread through the extensive trade routes that the Hittites controlled. These routes connected them to various parts of the Near East, including regions where numerous different infectious diseases were prevalent. The disease, believed to be tularemia, also known as rabbit fever, is caused by the bacterium Francisella tularensis. This disease could have spread through contact with infected animals, particularly rodents, or through insect bites. This disease is characterized by symptoms such as fever, chills, muscle pain, and respiratory complications, which align with the descriptions found in Hittite texts. The plague was not just a health crisis, but also a social and political one. It caused significant labor shortages, as reflected in the desperate correspondence between the Hittite rulers and their neighbors. The famous Amarna letters, for instance, include pleas from the Hittite king to the Egyptian pharaoh, describing how the plague had decimated the male population. This letter specifically describes how the plague left the empire without essential workers. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Hittite plague is the suggestion that it could represent one of the earliest instances of biological warfare. Some historians hypothesize that the Hittites, realizing the destructive potential of the disease, may have intentionally spread it to their enemies. There are records suggesting that diseased rams were sent to enemy territories, potentially spreading the disease among their foes. This theory, while speculative, highlights the desperate measures the Hittites may have taken as they struggled to maintain their dominance in the region. The long-term impact of the plague on the Hittite Empire was profound. The epidemic exacerbated existing internal conflicts and succession crises, leading to periods of instability that weakened the central authority. The weakened state struggled to fend off external threats, and over time, this contributed to the empire's decline. By the 12th century BC, the once mighty Hittite Empire had disintegrated, with its territories gradually absorbed by the emerging powers in the region. The death of Joseph Bone Elwell. Joseph Bone Elwell was a prominent figure in early 20th century New York, known for his mastery of the card game bridge. Born on February 24, 1873, in Cranford, New Jersey, Elwell grew up in a comfortable family setting. As a young man, he pursued a career in sales, but eventually found his true passion in the world of bridge, a card game that was rapidly gaining popularity among the elite. Elwell's skill at the game earned him recognition as one of the foremost experts in the United States. He authored several books on bridge, including Elwell on Bridge and Advanced Bridge, which were widely regarded as definitive guides and became a sought-after figure in New York's high society. Despite his professional success, Elwell's personal life was tumultuous. He had a reputation as a womanizer, which led to a strained marriage that ended in separation. On the morning of June 11, 1920, Elwell was found severely wounded in his Manhattan home. Elwell was last seen alive by a milkman around 6:30 a.m. when he collected his mail and newspaper. By 9 a.m., his housekeeper, Marie Larson, discovered him slumped in a chair in his living room, still in his pajamas, with a gunshot wound to his forehead. His toupee and dentures were missing, adding an odd touch to the scene. Despite the severity of his injury, Elwell was initially still alive but succumbed to his wounds shortly thereafter, without regaining consciousness. The case was immediately sensationalized by the press, partly due to the bizarre circumstances surrounding it. The room where Elwell was found was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. The police discovered a .45 caliber bullet on the floor, but the weapon itself was never found. Additionally, a cigar of a brand different from Elwell's usual choice was found in the room, suggesting he might have had a visitor shortly before the incident. Despite extensive investigations, the case went cold. The police interviewed hundreds of people, including Elwell's numerous romantic entanglements and business associates, but no definitive leads emerged. Theories ranged from a botched robbery to a crime of passion. But the lack of concrete evidence meant that speculation ran wild. Some suggested that Elwell's killer might have been someone close to him, perhaps even someone he knew well enough to let into his home early in the morning. The mystery deepened with time as various confessions and claims surfaced, only to be debunked later. One man confessed to the crime a year later, but his confession was dismissed as the ramblings of a mentally unstable individual. The 1836 Bank of England Vault Incident. In 1836, the Bank of England, one of the world's most secure financial institutions that housed a significant portion of the nation's wealth, was the site of a bizarre incident. The story begins with a series of anonymous letters sent to the directors of the Bank of England. The mysterious author claimed to have access to the bank's gold vaults. Initially, the bank's directors dismissed these letters as a prank. However, the persistent writer finally managed to pique their curiosity by offering to meet them at a time of their choosing, inside the vault itself. When the directors gathered at the appointed time and place, they were shocked to hear a noise emanating from beneath the vault's floorboards. To their amazement, a man emerged from the floor. This man was a sewer worker who, while conducting routine maintenance, had stumbled upon an old drain that led directly beneath the bank's gold vault. The man's route into the vault was an unintentional discovery. He had found the drain while navigating the sewer system below the city. His revelation highlighted a significant and previously unnoticed vulnerability in what was considered an impregnable stronghold. The directors were initially horrified at the potential disaster that could have occurred, but upon realizing that the worker had not taken any gold, they were relieved. To reward his honesty, the Bank of England gave the sewer worker a sum of £800, an extremely substantial amount at the time. This gesture was both a reward and an attempt to ensure the man's silence about the incident, which could have severely tarnished the bank's reputation. Despite the incident's dramatic nature, the name of this honest sewer worker has not been preserved in historical records, adding an element of mystery to the tale. There is also some debate among historians about the exact details of the event and whether all elements of the story are factual or have been embellished over time. Nonetheless, the Bank of England itself acknowledges the story, though it is shrouded in some historical ambiguity. This incident also led to increased scrutiny and improvements in the security of the bank's vaults. In the following years, the bank took steps to ensure that no such breach could occur again, including detailed investigations and upgrades to the sewer systems surrounding the bank. The death of Sophocles. Sophocles was one of ancient Greece's most celebrated playwrights, and one of the leading figures of his era overall. Born around 496 BC in Colonus, a suburb of Athens, Sophocles lived through a century that saw significant cultural, political, and military developments in Greece. He was known for his extensive body of work, writing over 120 plays, although only 7 have survived in complete form, including the renowned Oedipus Rex and Antigone. Sophocles' life was marked by his success in the dramatic competitions of Athens. He won at least 20 victories in these contests, a testament to his unmatched talent in crafting tragic narratives that resonated deeply with the Athenian audience. His contributions to drama, such as the introduction of a third actor, and the reduction of the chorus's role in the plot revolutionized the theatrical experience. As for the final chapter of Sophocles' life, it's a mix of both historical accounts and speculative tales. He reportedly lived into his 90s, passing away around 406 BC. Despite his advanced age, he was still actively involved in Athenian society and theater. Interestingly, there are several theories and stories about his last moments that continue to intrigue scholars and enthusiasts alike. One popular story suggests that Sophocles died while reciting lines from his play Antigone, overwhelmed by the emotions of his own words. This tale is likely fictitious, given the lack of reliable sources to confirm it. Another account, recorded by ancient historians, implies that his passing might have occurred shortly after leading a chorus in mourning for his rival fellow playwright Euripides. This event underscores the close relationships between the great playwrights of the time. Additionally, ancient sources like Plutarch mention an unusual tale where Sophocles supposedly choked on a grape. There is also a more practical explanation that his end came naturally due to old age. This aligns with the historical context of the time, where individuals in their 90s were extremely rare, and living to such an age was an achievement in itself. These narratives, while differing in detail, collectively emphasize the deep respect and admiration that Sophocles commanded during and after his life. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel, located in Estes Park, Colorado, is a historic landmark known for its grandeur, as well as its eerie reputation. Opened in 1909, the hotel was the brainchild of Freeland Oscar Stanley, the co-inventor of the Stanley steamer automobile. It was originally designed as a luxury resort for wealthy Easterners and a health retreat for those suffering from tuberculosis. The hotel offered state-of-the-art amenities, including electricity, telephones, and modern bathrooms in every room, a rarity at the time. The hotel's connection to the supernatural is deeply intertwined with its history. One of the most famous stories involves room 217. In 1911, a gas leak caused an explosion in this room, throwing chambermaid Elizabeth Wilson into the air. Miraculously, she survived and continued working at the hotel until her retirement. Today, guests who stay in room 217 report odd occurrences, such as their belongings being mysteriously rearranged, and some claim to have seen Wilson's ghost. The hotel's most famous brush with horror came in 1974, when author Stephen King stayed there with his wife Tabitha. The hotel was nearly deserted as it was closing for the season, and the eerie atmosphere left a profound impact on King. That night, he had a vivid nightmare about his son being chased by a possessed fire hose down the long, empty corridors of the hotel. This dream inspired his novel, The Shining, which turned the Stanley Hotel into a cultural icon. The Stanley Hotel's haunted reputation is supported by other reports of paranormal activity. The fourth floor, which used to house female employees and children, is often cited as a hotspot for ghostly encounters. Guests have reported hearing phantom footsteps and children's laughter echoing through the halls, despite the floor being empty. Additionally, the hotel's concert hall is rumored to be haunted by the ghost of Flora Stanley, Freeland Stanley's wife, who was known to play the piano in life, and some say she still does. Aside from its spooky tales, the hotel has played a significant role in local history. It survived periods of decline, particularly in the 1970s, when it was nearly demolished. The resurgence of interest following Stephen King's visit and the subsequent publication of The Shining helped restore the hotel to its former glory. Nigel the Parrot. Nigel, the African gray parrot, originally lived in Torrance, California, with his owner, Darren Chick, a British expatriate. Known for mimicking Darren's British accent, Nigel was an integral part of Darren's life. However, in 2010, Nigel went missing, leaving Darren heartbroken and concerned for the well being of his beloved pet. For 4 years, Nigel's whereabouts remained unknown. Then, in 2014, he reappeared under mysterious circumstances. Nigel was found by Julissa Sperling, a dog groomer, who noticed the parrot whistling and chattering outside her door. However, something was different. Nigel was now speaking Spanish. Words and phrases like "que pasó," meaning what happened, and references to someone named Larry were part of his new vocabulary. The journey to reunite Nigel with Darren began when Julissa, recognizing that this was someone's pet, searched online for missing parrots. Eventually, she connected with Teresa Miko, a veterinarian who was searching for her own lost parrot. Although Teresa's bird was not Nigel, she helped trace Nigel's origins back to Darren through his microchip records. The reunion was emotional, albeit Nigel initially bit Darren, perhaps as a reaction to the confusion and stress of being in an unfamiliar environment again. This story leaves many questions unanswered. Where was Nigel for those 4 years? How did he pick up Spanish, and who was Larry? Some suggest Nigel was cared for by a Spanish-speaking household during his time away, which would explain his new linguistic skills. However, the identity of Larry remains a puzzle, with no concrete leads on who this person might be or what role they played in Nigel's life during his absence. African gray parrots, like Nigel, are known for their exceptional intelligence, often compared to that of a young child. These brainy birdos are capable of learning over 1,000 words and using them in context, which adds a layer of intrigue to Nigel's story. Their ability to mimic human speech so precisely is a well-documented phenomenon, but Nigel's case is unique in that he completely switched languages during his time away. Despite the unanswered questions, Nigel's safe return to his original owner is a heartwarming conclusion to what could have been a tragic tale. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich on October 21, 1978, is a case which has intrigued both aviation experts and UFO enthusiasts alike for decades. Valentich, a 20-year-old Australian pilot, was flying a Cessna over the Bass Strait, a notoriously treacherous stretch of water between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. His last radio transmission, coupled with reports of strange lights in the sky, have fueled decades of speculation. Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport near Melbourne for what was intended to be a 125-mile training flight to King Island. The weather was clear, and Valentich, though young, had logged around 150 hours of flying experience. At approximately 7 p.m., Valentich contacted the Melbourne Flight Service to report an unidentified aircraft following him at 4,500 feet. According to Valentich, this aircraft was large, had 4 bright landing lights, and was moving at a speed that seemed unusual for any known aircraft. The Flight Service, however, reported no other aircraft in the vicinity. Over the next several minutes, Valentich described increasingly erratic behavior from the unknown object, stating at one point that it was orbiting above him. He described that it was shiny and metallic, with a green light unlike any plane he knew of. At 7:12 p.m., Valentich reported engine trouble, and when asked to describe the other aircraft again, his chilling response was, and I quote, "It isn't an aircraft." This was followed by a strange metallic scraping sound before communication was lost permanently. The subsequent search efforts were extensive but ultimately fruitless. No wreckage of Valentich's aircraft was found, and the Australian Department of Transport could not determine a cause for the disappearance. 5 years later, a piece of what was possibly his aircraft, a cowl flap, was found washed ashore on Flinders Island. but it provided no concrete answers. Valentich's disappearance quickly became a focal point for UFO speculation. His father, Guido Valentich, revealed after the incident that Frederick was a fervent believer in UFOs and often expressed fears of being attacked by one. This, combined with the peculiar circumstances of his final transmission, led many to conclude that his disappearance was the result of an extraterrestrial encounter. Witnesses in the area that night reported seeing strange lights and objects in the sky, further fueling these theories. One witness took a photograph near Cape Otway on the Bass Strait, which allegedly showed a fast-moving object exiting the water. I have attached this photograph here, and you may want to take a moment to look at the picture on your left. Personally, from this photograph, I'm unable to tell anything about the object, but let me know what you think in the comments. However, not all explanations point to extraterrestrial activity. Some experts suggest that Valentich may have become disoriented, leading to what is known as a graveyard spiral. This is a type of uncontrolled descending turn that can occur when a pilot becomes confused about their orientation. The green lights he reported could have been reflections or celestial bodies like planets, which can appear unusually bright under certain conditions. Additionally, the strange sounds heard at the end of his transmission might have been mechanical noises from the aircraft as it entered this fatal spiral. Despite these alternative explanations, the case of Frederick Valentich remains unresolved. No conclusive evidence has emerged to explain his disappearance, and the mystery continues to captivate. The death of Meriwether Lewis. Meriwether Lewis, famed for co-leading the Lewis and Clark expedition, met an untimely end on October 10, 1809, at Grinder's Stand, a remote inn along the Natchez Trace in Tennessee. At the time of his demise, Lewis was on a journey from St. Louis to Washington, D.C., where he intended to address financial issues related to his role as the governor of the Louisiana Territory. The Natchez Trace, known as the Devil's Backbone, was a perilous route infamous for its bandits and rough conditions. On the night in question, Lewis reportedly behaved erratically, asking for alcohol but consuming little and pacing nervously. Later, sounds of gunshots were heard, followed by Lewis's voice calling out for water. The innkeeper, Mrs. Grinder, claimed she was too frightened to assist and found him severely injured the next morning. The official explanation given by those close to Lewis, including Thomas Jefferson and William Clark, was that he had chosen to end himself. They cited his well-documented bouts of depression and earlier attempts at this act. Jefferson himself mentioned Lewis's sensible depressions of mind, and noted that Lewis had arranged his affairs in a way that suggested he anticipated his own passing. However, this explanation has been challenged over the years. Some believe that Lewis might have been a victim of foul play, with theories ranging from a robbery gone wrong to more elaborate plots involving political adversaries. One of the most notable figures implicated in these theories is General Wilkinson, the former governor of the Louisiana Territory, who was later revealed to be an agent working for Spain. Wilkinson's involvement in numerous conspiracies, including a notorious plot with Aaron Burr, has led some to speculate that he might have orchestrated Lewis's demise. Further fueling the debate, when Lewis's grave was inspected in 1847, the commission responsible for erecting his monument suggested that his end was more likely due to a, quote, assassin. However, they provided little evidence to support this claim. The controversy persists in part because of the conflicting accounts from the night at Grinder's Stand and the fact that no thorough investigation was conducted at the time. The circumstances of Lewis's final hours have been the subject of renewed interest, with descendants and historians alike calling for his remains to be exhumed to allow for modern forensic analysis. Despite advances in technology that could potentially shed light on the mystery, the National Park Service has denied these requests, citing concerns over the integrity of the gravesite. The lost city of Helike, often referred to as the real-life Atlantis, was an ancient Greek city located on the northern coast of the Peloponnesus, near the Gulf of Corinth. It was a prominent city-state and a leading member of the Achaean League, a confederation of 12 cities, and worshipped Poseidon as its chief deity. The city's prosperity and religious significance made it a central hub for trade and culture in ancient Greece. Helike's sudden destruction occurred in the winter of 373 BC. Ancient accounts, though written years after the event, describe a catastrophic earthquake followed by a massive tsunami that submerged the city. The earthquake caused the ground to sink, and as the waters of the Corinthian Gulf surged over the city, it disappeared beneath the waves, leaving no trace. For centuries, Helike's ruins were said to be visible underwater, with even sailors reporting glimpses of a submerged statue of Poseidon. The mystery of Helike primarily revolves around its sudden disappearance. The city's disappearance sparked numerous legends and theories, with some ancient writers suggesting that Helike's destruction was a divine punishment from Poseidon. This association with the sea god, along with the city's sudden submersion, led many to speculate that Helike could have inspired the legend of Atlantis, as described by Plato. While this connection remains a theory, it underscores the lasting impact of Helike's fate on Greek mythology and historical lore. For centuries, the exact location of Helike remained a mystery. Many believed it had sunk into the depths of the Gulf of Corinth, and attempts to locate the ruins focused on underwater archaeology. It wasn't until the late 20th century that a breakthrough occurred. In 2001, archaeologist Dora Katsanopoulou and her team made a significant discovery inland, near the modern village of Rizomylos. They found remnants of buildings and artifacts from the classical period, buried under a layer of silt that suggested the area had once been a lagoon, not an underwater city. The findings revealed that the city had not sunk into the sea, but could have been submerged by a combination of the earthquake and the subsequent formation of a lagoon. Over time, the lagoon silted up, and the city was buried under layers of sediment, preserving it for millennia until modern archaeology could uncover its secrets. Today, the site of Helike continues to be an area of active archaeological research. Excavations have uncovered various artifacts and structures, providing insights into the daily life, culture, and ultimate demise of this once thriving city. Chandra Levy, a 24-year-old intern at the Federal Bureau of Prisons, vanished in Washington, D.C. on May 1, 2001. Her disappearance captivated national attention, intertwining politics and media frenzy due to her affair with Congressman Gary Condit. Chandra was last seen alive at her apartment complex in DuPont Circle. Neighbors reported hearing a scream on the night of her disappearance, and subsequent investigation revealed significant delays in police response and errors in handling evidence. Surveillance footage that could have provided crucial leads was overwritten before being reviewed by investigators. The affair with Congressman Condit became a central focus of the investigation. Condit initially denied the relationship, but later admitted to it during police questioning. Despite extensive media speculation and intense scrutiny, Condit was never formally charged or even identified as a suspect in her disappearance. The affair, however, significantly impacted his political career, leading to his loss in the Democratic primary for his congressional seat in 2002. Chandra's remains were discovered a year later in Rock Creek Park by a jogger. The skeletal remains, scattered along a steep slope, provided little conclusive evidence about the cause of her demise. Key items found at the scene included a sports bra, leggings, and a Walkman. Due to the decomposition, forensic experts could not determine a specific cause, though damage to her hyoid bone suggested possible strangulation. In 2009, Ingmar Guandike, who was already serving time for attacking two other women in Rock Creek Park, was charged in Levy's case. He was convicted in 2010 based primarily on the testimony of a jailhouse informant who later recanted. The lack of direct evidence and subsequent revelations about witness credibility led to the overturning of his conviction in 2015. By 2016, prosecutors dropped all charges, and Guandiki faced deportation to El Salvador for his other confirmed crimes. Despite multiple attempts to bring closure over the years, the true story behind Chandra's disappearance and fate remains a mystery. The SS Baichimo, often referred to as the ghost ship of the Arctic, was built in 1914 by the Lindholmen's shipyard in Sweden. This 230-foot-long cargo steamer originally served trade routes between Sweden and Germany. After World War I, it was seized by the British as part of war reparations and sold to the Hudson's Bay Company. Renamed SS Baichimo, the ship was primarily used to trade fur pelts along the northern coasts of Canada and Alaska. In October 1931, during a routine voyage, the ship became trapped in the ice near Barrow, Alaska. An early and severe winter storm rendered the ship immobile. Captain Sidney Cornwell and his crew initially hoped that the ice would soon thaw, allowing them to continue their journey. As conditions worsened, 15 crew members were airlifted to safety, while Cornwell and the remaining crew set up a temporary camp on the ice near the stranded vessel. On November 24, 1931, a blizzard struck, and when it cleared, the Baichimo had vanished. The crew assumed it had sunk, but soon after, an Inuit hunter reported seeing the ship drifting 50 miles south. Despite several attempts to retrieve it, the ship continued to elude its would-be salvagers. Over the next few decades, the Baichimo was sighted numerous times, often floating aimlessly or trapped in ice. These sightings occurred sporadically up until 1969, when it was last seen off the Alaskan coast. One of the most famous encounters occurred in 1933, when a group of Inuit hunters took refuge on the ship during a storm. They were stranded on the ship for 10 days and found themselves 250 miles from where they had originally boarded when the storm finally abated. Notably, in another incident in 1933, the ship was seen off the coast of Wainwright, Alaska. During this sighting, the locals decided to board the ship, take some items off it, and also take pictures of the ship, which have survived. Notably, the picture on the screen right now is one of the pictures taken during this 1933 incident. This incident, among others, cemented the Baichimo's reputation as a ghost ship, drifting through the Arctic waters on its own. Despite numerous efforts to locate the ship, including a formal search by the Alaskan government in 2006, the ship remains lost. Theories abound regarding its fate. Some suggest it eventually succumbed to the harsh Arctic conditions, while others believe it still drifts somewhere, preserved by the cold. Still others believe that the ship's apparent longevity as a ghost ship indicates otherworldly forces at play. Some have suggested that there may be a time slip causing the ship to disappear and reappear throughout the years. The Tarim mummies, discovered in the Tarim Basin of present-day Xinjiang, China, date back to around 2100 BC. They were first brought to light in the early 20th century by European explorers. However, the most significant discoveries occurred in the late 1970s, when Chinese archaeologist Wang Binghua unearthed several of these mummies in the Tarim Basin. The dry, salty conditions of the desert and the extreme cold of the region's winters naturally preserved the bodies, which is why some of these mummies remain in an excellent state. Notably, their skin, hair, and clothing is still intact. What makes these mummies particularly intriguing are their distinct Caucasian features. Some have blonde or red hair and facial structures associated with European features. Notably, the Yingpan man, one of the tallest mummies found at 6 feet 6 inches, was buried in a red woolen tunic adorned with gold embroidery and a gold mask. Recent genetic studies have shed light on the origins of the Tarim Basin mummies. Contrary to earlier theories that they were Indo-European migrants, it is now believed that these mummies were descendants of an isolated population related to ancient North Eurasians. Their diet included wheat and dairy from West Asia, millet from East Asia, and medicinal plants from Central Asia, showing a wide range of cultural influences. The burial practices of the Tarim Basin people are another area of intrigue. Many of the mummies were found in boat-shaped coffins, covered with cowhide and marked with wooden posts or oars. These boat burials are unique and have no direct parallels in other known ancient cultures. While much has been uncovered about the Tarim mummies, many questions remain unanswered. William John Cavendish Scott Bentinck, the 5th Duke of Portland, was born on September 17, 1800, in London, England. He was the second son of William Bentinck, the 4th Duke of Portland, and his wife Henrietta. Despite not being the firstborn, he eventually inherited the title after his elder brother's death in 1824, which made him the Marquis of Titchfield. He became the Duke of Portland upon his father's death in 1854. John Bentinck was known for his reclusive and eccentric lifestyle, which has sparked numerous stories and speculations. His seclusion was so extreme that he communicated with his staff through a series of letterboxes outside his rooms. Only his personal valet was allowed to see him face to face. He was known to venture outside, mainly at night, accompanied by a servant who carried a lantern 40 yards ahead of him to light the way. One of the most interesting aspects of the Duke's life was his extensive renovation of Welbeck Abbey, his family estate. He hired thousands of workers and spent a fortune transforming it. He had a vast network of tunnels and rooms built underneath the abbey. These tunnels extended for 15 miles, connecting various buildings on the estate and even reaching the nearby train station. The underground complex included a library, a ballroom, a picture gallery, and a billiards room. Some tunnels had glass ceilings to allow natural light, and many of the rooms were painted pink. He also had a peculiar routine when traveling. When he needed to go to his London residence, Harcourt House, he would travel in a carriage loaded onto a train. Upon arrival, all the household staff were required to hide as he quickly made his way to his study. His dietary habits were equally unusual. It was said that he insisted on having a roast chicken ready at all times, delivered to him via heated trucks running through the tunnels. He once proposed to the famous opera singer Adelaide Kemble, but she turned him down. This rejection reportedly had a profound impact on him, further deepening his reclusiveness. Despite his secluded life, there are claims that he fathered several illegitimate children, although these claims remain unverified. He was known to handle all his business via correspondence and avoided any public or social engagements. He rarely participated in politics, despite serving as a member of Parliament for King's Lynn from 1824 to 1826. His political activity was minimal, and he took years to take his seat in the House of Lords after inheriting the dukedom. The true motivations behind his actions are still debated. One prevalent theory suggests that the Duke may have suffered from psychological issues, such as social anxiety or a form of autism. His extreme shyness, refusal to see people, and unusual communication methods support this idea. The Duke's insistence on isolation and his peculiar routines could be seen as coping mechanisms for these conditions. Another theory posits that the Duke was hiding a physical disfigurement. This idea is fueled by rumors from his time that he was either disfigured or suffering from some ailment. His avoidance of public appearances and reluctance to be seen by anyone, including his doctor, add weight to this theory. Some theories suggest that the Duke's behavior was driven by an extreme obsession with privacy and control. His elaborate underground tunnels and rooms at Welbeck Abbey, which allowed him to move around unseen, indicate a desire to avoid public scrutiny. This obsession might have been a result of his introverted nature, amplified by his status and wealth, which allowed him to indulge in such extensive modifications to his estate. An interesting posthumous theory involves the Druce case, a legal controversy that emerged after the Duke's death. It was alleged that the Duke led a double life as Thomas Charles Druce, a London upholsterer. This claim led to a sensational court case where Druce's coffin was exhumed to prove or disprove the theory. The exhumation revealed Druce's body, debunking the theory, but it added another layer of intrigue to the Duke's already enigmatic life. Hey everyone, just popping in for a short second to promote my channel. Remember to like and subscribe, and also share this video with your friends and family. And if you're feeling really generous, make sure to consider signing up for the Patreon or a YouTube membership. There's some exclusive content, and occasionally videos are dropped in early access. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, was a notable American clairvoyant whose life and work have fascinated many for over a century. Born on March 18, 1877 in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Cayce claimed to possess the ability to channel his higher self and access information on a wide range of subjects while in a trance-like state. Cayce's journey into the mystical began at a young age. He reportedly saw his deceased grandfather's ghost and had a vision of a winged woman who told him his prayers had been answered. Also, just looking over my script here, a ghost of a deceased person seems a little redundant, doesn't it? Anyway, if you're hearing this clearly, I decided to keep it in. This vision led him to develop a unique ability. He could sleep on books and absorb their contents. This skill transformed him from a struggling student into the best in his class. In 1892, after being struck in the spine during a schoolyard game, Cayce experienced a profound shift. He began diagnosing his own ailments in his sleep, providing specific remedies that he claimed worked. This marked the beginning of his career as a clairvoyant healer. Over his lifetime, Cayce provided more than 10,000 documented readings on topics such as health, reincarnation, dreams, the afterlife, and even the lost civilization of Atlantis. Cayce's insights into Atlantis are among his most intriguing claims. He described Atlantis as a technologically advanced civilization that existed around 10,000 years ago. According to Cayce, the Atlanteans harnessed quantum energy, used crystals for power, and had technologies far superior to modern inventions, including aircraft and submarines. He predicted that evidence of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in the Bahamas, a claim that some believe was partially validated with the discovery of the Bimini Road in 1968. Cayce's medical readings recommended treatments that included dietary changes, use of natural remedies, and even specific mental exercises. Many of his health suggestions, such as the benefits of a good night's sleep and exercise, have been supported by modern research. That said, it's important to note that he was by no means the first person to preach the positive effects of sleep, or that exercise is healthy. Apart from his health readings, Cayce made numerous prophecies about future events. He is credited with predicting the stock market crash of 1929 and the outbreak of World War II. Cayce's work led to the founding of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, in 1931, an organization dedicated to the study and preservation of his readings. The ARE continues to explore Cayce's insights and their applications in various fields. Despite his remarkable abilities, Cayce's life was not without controversy. Skeptics question the validity of his claims and attribute his trance readings to psychological phenomena rather than supernatural abilities. However, his supporters argue that the accuracy and depth of his readings provide compelling evidence of his gifts. On December 6, 2009, Susan Powell, a 28-year-old mother of two from West Valley City, Utah, disappeared. Susan was born in October 1981 and married Joshua Powell in 2001. They moved to West Valley City in 2004. By 2009, their marriage was strained due to Joshua's controlling behavior and financial difficulties, including a bankruptcy filing in 2007 with over $200,000 in debt. Susan's anxiety over their relationship led her to document her concerns. In a secret will, she wrote about her fears for her safety, indicating that her potential demise might not be accidental. On the day of her disappearance, Susan took her children to church and later interacted with a neighbor. By the next morning, when neither she nor her children appeared at daycare, alarms were raised. When police arrived at the Powell home, they found her belongings intact, two fans directed at a damp spot on the carpet, and no signs of forced entry. Joshua returned that evening, claiming he had taken his sons on a spontaneous camping trip in freezing temperatures, an explanation that aroused suspicion. Police investigations quickly centered on Joshua. His subsequent behavior raised more red flags. He rented a car on December 8th and drove over 800 miles before returning it. During searches, police discovered traces of Susan's blood on the carpet and her handwritten documents in a safety deposit box outlining her marital distress. The children also made concerning statements. Charles mentioned his mother went camping with them but did not return, and Braden drew a picture of three people in a car with, quote, "Mommy in the trunk." Further complicating the case was Joshua's father, Stephen Powell. Let's just say the apple didn't fall far from the tree with Joshua, as the elder Powell somehow manages to give Joshua a run for his money on the scumbag charts. In 2010, a search of Stephen's home revealed thousands of images of Susan taken without her knowledge, indicating an unhealthy obsession. Stephen was later arrested for unrelated charges of voyeurism and possession of the worst of illicit materials. Despite these developments, the investigation into Susan's disappearance stalled due to a lack of concrete evidence. In 2011, investigators discovered a potential grave site in Utah's West Desert, where Joshua had camped. Although they detected soil disturbances, no remains were found. Throughout this period, Joshua maintained his innocence, but refused to cooperate fully with authorities. Tragically, on February 5, 2012, Joshua committed yet another horrific act, somehow topping his previous depravities. During a supervised visit with his children, he locked out the social worker, incapacitated his sons with an axe, and set the house on fire, resulting in all three of them dying. This shocking event closed one chapter of the investigation, but left many questions unanswered about Susan's fate. Theories about Susan's disappearance abound. Some believe Joshua might have disposed of her body in a mine shaft, a theory supported by his previous comments on how to effectively hide a body. Despite extensive searches and investigations, Susan Powell's remains have never been found, and her case officially remains unsolved. If you have any information as to the whereabouts of Susan Powell, please reach out to the West Valley, Utah Police Department. The legend that Jesus Christ lived in Japan as a garlic farmer is one of the most fascinating and obscure tales in religious folklore. According to the myth, after narrowly escaping crucifixion, Jesus fled across Siberia to Japan, where he lived a long life under the name Daitenku Taro Jurai. The story centers around the village of Shingo in northern Japan, where locals claim that Jesus settled down, married a woman named Miyuko, and fathered 3 daughters. He is said to have lived as a humble garlic farmer, eventually dying at the age of 106. The origins of this legend are traced back to documents known as the Takenouchi documents, which were allegedly discovered in the 1930s. These documents, which have since been lost or destroyed, supposedly detailed Jesus' journey to Japan and his life there. According to the legend, during the time when the New Testament suggests Jesus was missing from the public eye, the so-called lost years, he was in Japan, learning about spirituality. After returning to Judea, he faced persecution, leading to his escape and eventual permanent settlement in Japan. The village of Shingo has embraced this legend, establishing a Tomb of Christ, which has become a tourist attraction. The tomb is said to contain not only Jesus' remains, but also a lock of hair from the Virgin Mary, and an ear of his brother Isukiri, who, according to the legend, was crucified in Jesus' place. And no need to backtrack because you heard correctly. According to this legend, Jesus inexplicably had a half-Japanese brother. Despite the lack of historical evidence, the site holds significant cultural importance in the village, with annual rituals and a small museum dedicated to the legend. The tale of Jesus in Japan reflects the broader theme of religious syncretism in Japan, where elements of different religious traditions often blend into the local culture. The Shingo legend is a perfect example of how Japanese culture can integrate and reinterpret various religious narratives, making them part of a unique local tradition. This is the form of syncretism which allowed elements of Buddhism, Shintoism, Taoism, and Confucianism to mix freely without necessarily challenging the established religious doctrines. Notably, it is unclear if this quote-unquote holy garlic grown by Jesus had any specific properties differentiating it from your run-of-the-mill garlic. That said, I think it goes without saying that this garlic would be extra potent against vampires at the very least. The missing ghost bomber of Pittsburgh. On January 31st, 1956, an American B-25 Mitchell bomber crashed into the Monongahela River near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The B-25 departed from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, stopping at several bases en route to Olmsted Air Force Base in Pennsylvania. It was piloted by Major William Dotson and carried 5 other crew members: Captain John Jameson, Captain Steve Tabak, Staff Sergeant Walter Susi, Airman Second Class Charles Smith, and passengers Captain J.P. Ingraham and Sergeant Alfred Alement. On the final leg of its journey, the crew noticed an unusual drop in fuel levels and attempted to make an emergency landing at Greater Pittsburgh Airport, but ended up aiming for the Monongahela River. At approximately 4:11 p.m., both engines failed, and Major Dotson successfully executed a water landing in the river near the Homestead Grays Bridge. The plane floated for about 10 to 15 minutes, allowing 4 of the crew members to be rescued by a nearby riverboat. Unfortunately, Captain Ingram and Staff Sergeant Susi attempted to swim to shore, but did not survive the attempt. The U.S. Coast Guard and the Army Corps of Engineers conducted a 2-week search operation involving dredging and diving, yet no trace of the aircraft was found. The salvage rights were eventually sold to a local seaplane pilot, but further efforts also failed to locate the bomber. Some speculate that the aircraft was carrying top-secret cargo, such as nuclear materials or even a UFO, and was covertly removed by the military. Others believe the bomber was buried in a deep gravel pit or eroded by the polluted waters of the Monongahela River. One plausible theory suggests the aircraft was swallowed by a deep hole in the riverbed created by the Dravo Corporation during the 1950s. Over the years, this hole may have filled with silt, further burying the plane. Despite using modern sonar technology and remote-controlled cameras, the B-25 Recovery Group, formed in 1995, has yet to find the plane although they continue to search. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the plane crash, and some claim to have seen it being pulled from the river late at night, suggesting a possible cover-up. These accounts, combined with the lack of physical evidence, have perpetuated the mystery and numerous conspiracy theories. This was a suggestion made a number of months ago by subscriber jhaim85. If you have a suggestion for this series, please leave a comment or join the Discord and leave the suggestion there. In the fall of 2001, the United States experienced a series of anthrax attacks, often referred to as Amerithrax, which compounded the national anxiety already heightened by 9/11. The anthrax letters were first mailed on September 18, 2001, targeting media outlets and political figures. These attacks resulted in 22 anthrax infections, with 11 of those being the more severe inhalational variety, leading to the demise of 5 individuals. The letters containing anthrax spores were sent to several locations, including NBC News, the New York Post, and the offices of Senators Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy. The Daschle letter, opened on October 15th, led to the temporary shutdown of government mail services due to the threat it posed. These letters were found to contain anthrax spores in a highly refined dry powder form, though there were conflicting reports on whether the spores were weaponized. Initial suspicion fell on foreign actors, given the timing and content of the letters, which included phrases associated with Al-Qaeda. However, the FBI soon redirected its focus to domestic sources when it was determined that the anthrax originated from an American laboratory. An American bioweapons expert was the first major suspect, and in a moment you'll see why I've chosen not to give his name. The FBI's intense investigation into this individual included surveillance and multiple invasive searches. He was eventually completely exonerated and won a substantial settlement from the U.S. government for defamation. Attention then turned to Dr. Bruce Ivins, another scientist at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. The FBI linked Ivins to the anthrax used in the attacks, based on his access to the strain and other circumstantial evidence. Ivins' behavior during the investigation, including his hospitalization for mental health issues, raised further suspicion. He passed away in 2008, and shortly afterward, the FBI declared Ivins the sole perpetrator, although this conclusion has been contested by various experts and studies since then. Despite the closure of the case, numerous questions and theories about the attacks remain. Some believe that Ivins could not have acted alone due to the complexity of producing the highly refined anthrax spores. This theory posits that other individuals with similar expertise and access to the laboratory might have been involved. Supporters of this theory argue that the FBI's investigation overlooked potential collaborators and relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence against Ivins. Several scientific and investigative bodies, including the National Academy of Sciences, have criticized the FBI's methods and conclusions. They argue that the scientific evidence linking Ivins to the anthrax was not conclusive and flawed. Some suggest that Ivins' mental health struggles were exacerbated by the intense pressure of the investigation, possibly leading to his demise. A Government Accountability Office report also highlighted deficiencies in the FBI's investigative techniques, casting further doubt on the official narrative. Another theory suggests that the anthrax attacks were part of a larger government conspiracy to push for stricter bioterrorism laws and increased funding for biodefense. Proponents of this theory highlight the timing of the attacks, suggesting it was used to justify the Patriot Act and other security measures. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy taking a few seconds to promote my work once again. Remember to like and subscribe, and also share this video with your friends and family. The Coca-Cola formula. Coca-Cola was invented in 1886 by Dr. John Pemberton, a pharmacist in Atlanta, Georgia. Initially, Pemberton was known for a different mixture called Pemberton's French Wine Coca, a tonic that combined coca leaf extract and wine. However, with the introduction of prohibition laws in Atlanta, Pemberton was forced to reformulate his product, removing the alcohol but retaining the coca leaf extract. This was later paired with caffeine-rich cola nut extract. Thus, Coca-Cola was born as a non-alcoholic beverage, marketed as a medicinal tonic. The formula for Coca-Cola has been heavily shrouded in secrecy from its inception. After Pemberton's death in 1888, the formula was sold to Asa Candler, who emphasized the secrecy of the recipe as a marketing strategy. It is said that the formula is known only to a few trusted individuals within the company, with the recipe kept under tight security at a vault in the World of Coca-Cola Museum. Despite numerous claims and supposed leaks over the years, the exact composition of Coca-Cola remains unknown to the public. The most famous supposed ingredient is merchandise 7X, a mysterious flavoring agent that is said to be the key to Coca-Cola's unique taste. According to various reports, merchandise 7X includes a blend of essential oils such as orange, lemon, nutmeg, and others, but the precise recipe and proportions are still a matter of speculation. One of the most persistent myths is that only 2 Coca-Cola executives have the quote keys to the formula, with each knowing only half of it to prevent either from revealing the entire recipe. While this makes for a compelling story, it's more likely part of Coca-Cola's extensive marketing mythology than a practical business strategy. In 2011, the radio show This American Life claimed to have discovered the original recipe, published in an old issue of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. While the recipe they found included ingredients like caffeine, vanilla, and citric acid, Coca-Cola swiftly dismissed the claim, maintaining that the real formula remains a secret. One of the most controversial aspects of Coca-Cola's history is its original inclusion of Coke, derived from the coca leaf. This ingredient was present in the formula until 1903, when public concern and evolving drug regulations forced the company to remove it. Despite the removal of Coke from Coke over a century ago, this fact continues to fuel debates and contributes to the drink's history. The secrecy surrounding the Coca-Cola formula has also led to dramatic episodes of corporate espionage. In 2006, a former Coca-Cola employee attempted to sell confidential information about a new product to PepsiCo. PepsiCo promptly alerted Coca-Cola about the attempt, leading to an FBI sting operation that resulted in the arrest of the individuals involved. Also, just a quick aside. Talk about drinking the advertising Kool-Aid. This guy seems like the sort of person who would conduct a citizen's arrest on the Hamburglar if given the opportunity. Karakoto, often referred to as the Black City, is located in the Gobi Desert within the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of China. It was established in 1032 AD by the Tangut people, a Tibeto-Burman ethnic group, as part of the Western Xia dynasty, which ran from 1038 to 1227 AD. The city's strategic location made it a significant stop along the Silk Road, connecting traders from the east and west. Encircled by formidable 9-meter-high walls, Karakoto was built to endure the harsh conditions of the Gobi Desert and to protect its inhabitants from invasions. Under the rule of the Western Xia dynasty, the city thrived. It became a melting pot of cultures, languages, and religions, with influences from Buddhism, Islam, and Nestorian Christianity. Art, education, and commerce flourished within its walls, making it a vital hub for the exchange of goods such as silk, porcelain, and spices. In 1226 AD, Karakoto fell to the Mongol Empire under the command of Genghis Khan. Unlike many other cities that faced total destruction at the hands of the Mongols, Karakoto was spared and even flourished under Mongol administration. It remained a vital trading post, and its cultural significance continued to grow. Notably, the famous Venetian traveler Marco Polo mentioned Karakoto, referring to it as Etsina in his accounts. However, the decline of Karakoto began in the late 14th century during the Ming dynasty's campaigns to consolidate control over northern China. According to historical records, the Ming army laid siege to the city in 1372 AD, cutting off its water supply by diverting the Aegean River, which was crucial for the city's survival. This led to severe drought within the city walls. One popular legend suggests that the city's last ruler, Karabator, took drastic measures during this desperate time, ultimately leading to the abandonment of the city. Another version of the story claims that Karabator managed to escape through a breach in the city walls, although the details remain unclear. Following the siege, the city was deserted and gradually consumed by the shifting sands of the Gobi Desert, erasing it from memory for centuries. Karakoto remained lost to history until the early 20th century, when Russian explorer Pyotr Kozlov stumbled upon its ruins during an expedition in 1908. Kozlov's discovery included a wealth of artifacts such as manuscripts, Buddhist paintings, and everyday items that provided valuable insights into the life and culture of the Tangut people. Many of these artifacts are now housed in museums across Russia, including the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Subsequent expeditions by various international teams throughout the 20th century continued to unearth significant finds, including manuscripts in the now extinct Tangut language. These discoveries have been instrumental in piecing together the history of Karakoto and the Tangut civilization. The Icy Hot Stuntas. Originating in the early 2000s, this group from Toccoa, Georgia, became an accidental icon of early internet culture. The Icy Hot Stuntas consisted of 3 members, Freeze, Blade, and Da Flame. These young men, inspired by the flashy, ostentatious style of popular rap groups of the time, decided to create their own music and persona. They constructed a website on GeoCities, a popular platform at the time, to promote their music and lifestyle. The site was filled with photos of the trio posing in front of cars, sporting oversized jewelry, and wearing exaggerated hip-hop fashion. The tagline of the site was, "Don't hate, appreciate," a phrase that would become synonymous with the group itself. The content on their website, which was meant to establish their presence in the music industry, quickly became the subject of widespread ridicule. Their attempts at emulating the hip-hop lifestyle were seen as inauthentic and laughable, particularly because the group members were middle-class white teenagers from suburban Georgia. This incongruity between their appearance and their aspirations turned the Icy Hot Stuntas into a meme, long before the term meme had entered common usage. The trio's website was widely shared across forums and email chains, often accompanied by mockery and derisive commentary. What made the Icy Hot Stuntas a particularly interesting case was their outward appearance of a complete and utter lack of self-awareness. Unlike modern internet personalities, who often play into their own parody, the Stuntas seemed entirely sincere in their efforts to break into the hip-hop scene. This sincerity only amplified the humor found in their attempts at stardom. For instance, the group's photos, which were supposed to exude a sense of coolness and street credibility, instead came off as poorly staged and awkward. The group was often pictured in their parents' driveways next to average cars, rather than the luxury vehicles that were synonymous with the image they tried to adopt. Early forums and websites like Something Awful and Fark picked up on the Stuntas, using their images in a plethora of Photoshop edits and meme creations. Interestingly, while the group eventually faded from the spotlight, at least one member, Brian Edmonds, who was known as Da Flame, continued to pursue a career in rap. Edmonds rebranded himself as B-Shock, a Christian rapper, and built a following within that niche. Notably, B-Shock has achieved legitimate success as an underground Christian rapper, with his song The Jesus Lean achieving almost 1 million views on YouTube. Two mysteries surround the icy hot stuntas. The first and perhaps most obvious is whether the members of the group themselves were actually as sincere as they appeared, or whether the entire thing was intended to be taken as parody. Perhaps the public just wasn't ready for three middle-class rural white kids rapping about their supposed ghetto life over trap beats in 2001. Or perhaps they realized they couldn't rap over the trap beats' average homeboy style and reach an audience. The biggest mystery surrounding the Icy Hot Stuntas is their lost discography. Notably, only 2 of their songs have been found at present and have been confirmed to be real. B-Shock, the one member of the group that continues to maintain a public profile, refuses to answer any questions whatsoever about the Icy Hot Stuntas. As such, until the other remaining members break their silence and come forward with their lost tracks, this mystery will likely remain unresolved. My audience has grown fairly large at this point, so I'm going to throw this out there. If you know any members of the Icy Hot Stuntas, please send me an email and we can discuss how I can get in touch with them to solve this mystery. You can reach me at the business email noted in my profile. Octopuses are some of the most mysterious and fascinating creatures in the ocean. They have played central roles in myth, science, and popular culture. First, it's essential to clarify a common misconception. Octopuses do not technically have tentacles, but arms. All 8 of their appendages are classified as arms because they are covered with suckers along their entire length, unlike tentacles, which usually have suckers only at their tips, as seen in squids. These arms are incredibly versatile, capable of complex movements, thanks to their muscular structure known as muscular hydrostats, which allows them to elongate, contract, and bend in any direction. This flexibility is what enables octopuses to navigate tight spaces, manipulate objects, and even walk on land. The octopus has long been a subject of fascination, often depicted in mythology and folklore. In ancient times, octopuses were considered monsters of the deep. For example, the kraken, a legendary sea monster said to dwell off the coast of Norway and Greenland, is often described as an enormous octopus-like creature that could drag entire ships down to the depths. This depiction of the octopus as a fearsome sea monster has persisted into modern times, influencing everything from literature to Hollywood films. One of the intriguing aspects of octopus arms is their ability to move even after being severed from the body. This phenomenon has puzzled scientists for years. The secret lies in the structure of the octopus's arm muscles, which store energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate. This allows the arms to continue moving for a short period after being detached from the body. Additionally, the suckers on the arms have their own set of muscles, which can contract and expand independently, contributing to the post-mortem movements. Another mystery involves the octopus's ability to regenerate lost arms. If an octopus loses an arm, it can regrow it over time. This regenerative ability is not just about replacing lost limbs, it also involves the restoration of complex neural networks that allow the arm to function just as well as the original. Octopus arms are not just about movement and manipulation, they are also sensory organs. Each arm contains about 2/3 of the octopus's neurons, allowing it to taste, touch, and even think with its arms. This decentralized nervous system means that each arm can operate semi-independently, which is why an octopus can perform multiple tasks simultaneously. This allows the octopus to pry open a shell with one arm while exploring its surroundings and remaining alert with another arm. Another interesting fact is that octopuses have a unique form of locomotion. While they are capable swimmers, they often prefer crawling, using their arms to pull themselves along the ocean floor. This method is less exhausting for them because one of their three hearts stops beating when they swim, which limits their oxygen supply. There are many stories about the behavior of octopuses that continue to fuel our fascination. For instance, octopuses are known escape artists. They can squeeze through incredibly tight spaces, often escaping from aquariums or containers in what seems like a well thought out plan. Their problem solving skills are so advanced that they can unscrew jars to get to food inside, showing a level of intelligence that is rare among invertebrates. One of the more mysterious occurrences involving octopuses happened in 2017, when more than 20 octopuses were seen crawling onto a beach in Wales. This behavior was highly unusual, as octopuses can survive on land for only a few minutes. The reasons behind this mass stranding remain unclear, with theories ranging from disorientation, caused by storms, to unknown environmental factors. One fringe theory even proposes that octopuses may not be of earthly origin. One of the most interesting arguments for the alien origin theory is the distinct genetic makeup of octopuses. The octopus genome is incredibly complex, with over 33,000 protein-coding genes, more than is found in humans. This vast genetic diversity has led some to speculate that octopuses might not be entirely of this world. The idea is that their genetic makeup could be the result of panspermia. This is a hypothesis that suggests life, or the precursors of life, can be distributed throughout the universe via meteoroids, asteroids, and other celestial bodies. This could imply that the octopus's ancestors may have arrived on Earth via such means millions of years ago. While this theory remains speculative and has been rejected by mainstream science, it remains fascinating nonetheless. Atomic weapons are fake. According to proponents of this theory, the narrative of the atomic bomb is a fabrication designed to instill fear, control populations, and justify government spending on alleged nuclear arsenals. The theory posits that the creation of nuclear weapons was a political tool rather than a scientific breakthrough. The existence of nuclear arsenals, the arms race, and the concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, are viewed by theorists as mechanisms for maintaining global power structures. The production and stockpiling of nuclear weapons, they argue, serve as justification for massive military budgets, which are actually funneled into the pockets of the elite. The theory questions the authenticity of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the existence of nuclear weapons, and the various nuclear tests purportedly conducted over the decades. The origins of the atomic bomb hoax theory can be traced back to the skepticism and paranoia that arose during the Cold War. The secrecy surrounding nuclear programs and the devastating potential of nuclear weapons contributed to a fertile ground for conspiracy theories. These doubts were exacerbated by the government's tight control over information, leading some to speculate that nuclear weapons were nothing more than props in a psychological warfare campaign. One of the core elements of the theory is the claim that the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were either exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Some theorists argue that the destruction seen in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was the result of conventional bombings rather than nuclear explosions. They cite the absence of any surviving photographs or videos, clearly showing the moment of detonation, as well as the rapid recovery of the cities, as evidence supporting their claims. Additionally, some theorists suggest that the iconic mushroom cloud images associated with atomic bombs could have been created using conventional explosives. Another critical aspect of the hoax theory revolves around the Trinity test, the first detonation of a nuclear weapon in July 1945 in New Mexico. Theorists claim that the test was staged, and the so-called nuclear explosion was actually a large conventional explosion. They argue that the secrecy surrounding the event, the controlled access to information, and the government's narrative are all indicative of a cover-up. The involvement of key figures such as J. Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves in the Manhattan Project is also seen as a calculated move to lend credibility to the hoax. Central to the atomic bomb hoax theory is the belief that governments, particularly the United States, have manipulated the media and public perception to maintain the illusion of nuclear weapons. The theory suggests that the media's portrayal of nuclear tests, such as those conducted at Bikini Atoll during Operation Crossroads, was carefully orchestrated. The footage of these tests, the theory claims, was either doctored or completely staged to convince the world of the bomb's existence and power. Additionally, the theory asserts that the scientific community has been complicit in the deception, either through direct involvement or by remaining silent. The fear of government retaliation or loss of funding is cited as reasons why scientists have not come forward to expose the alleged hoax. The anti-nuclear movement and other similar efforts are dismissed by theorists as controlled opposition meant to perpetuate the illusion of a global nuclear threat. Under this theory, the anti-nuclear movement simply exists to make atomic weaponry and nuclear power look more dangerous than it actually is. Notably, this is a theory which has been gaining in popularity in recent years. The Mokumokuren is a yokai from Japanese folklore, known for its distinctive manifestation as ghostly eyes that appear within the torn or damaged shoji, better known as traditional Japanese sliding paper doors. The appearance of the Mokumokuren is extremely simple yet terrifying all the same. It manifests as a multitude of eyes embedded in ripped shoji screens, with each eye varying in color and size to fill in the ripped holes. These eyes are often depicted as having red, blue, or green irises with black pupils. The image of being constantly watched by these disembodied eyes contributes to the Mokumokuren's reputation as a harbinger of unease and fear. The term Mokumokuren literally translates to many eyes or continuous eyes, a fitting description given its unsettling appearance. The Mokumokuren is believed to originate from ancient tales that highlight the importance of maintaining one's home, particularly the shoji, in good condition. According to one story, a stingy merchant who sought to save money by staying in an abandoned, dilapidated house instead of an inn encountered the Mokumokuren. In the dead of night, he awoke to find that the holes in the shoji were filled with multiple eyes staring at him. Instead of fleeing in terror, he collected the eyes and sold them to an eye surgeon, profiting from the supernatural encounter. While this story may be a classic tale of turning lemons into lemonade, the presence of the Mokumokuren in a home is typically seen as a bad omen. This yokai can also merge with other objects, such as walls or tatami mats, blending seamlessly into its surroundings. Some legends even suggest that this yokai has the power to possess humans, causing them to act strangely or become ill or grow eyes on their body. Despite this, the Mokumokuren is generally seen as more mischievous than malevolent, preferring to scare rather than directly harm humans. Modern sightings of this yokai are rare, but they are still reported to occur. Some theorists have suggested that the creature is in decline because shoji, the traditional Japanese paper doors, have been in sharp decline over the last century and a half. More skeptical minds believe that the creature never existed, but was caused by natural phenomenon such as poor visibility and low light, combined with poorly maintained shoji. Theft of the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa, also known as La Gioconda, was painted by Leonardo da Vinci between 1503 and 1506. The painting's fame began to rise in the 19th century, partly due to its mysterious subject, widely believed to be Lisa Gherardini, a woman from Florence. On August 21, 1911, the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre in Paris. The painting by Leonardo da Vinci was relatively well known in art circles, but not the global icon it is today. The theft was carried out by Vincenzo Perugia, an Italian handyman who had worked at the museum. Perugia managed to pull off the heist with surprising ease. Disguised in the white smock worn by museum employees, he removed the painting from its display, hid it under his clothes, and simply walked out of the museum. The theft went unnoticed for more than 24 hours. It wasn't until an artist who had come to paint the Mona Lisa's portrait noticed the empty space on the wall that the alarm was raised. By then, Perugia had already stashed the painting in a trunk in his Paris apartment. The media frenzy that followed the theft transformed the Mona Lisa into a worldwide sensation. The French police, desperate to solve the crime, interrogated several suspects, including the avant-garde poet Guillaume Apollinaire and the artist Pablo Picasso. Both men were eventually released without charge. The search for the painting stretched on for 2 years, with rumors and theories swirling about its whereabouts. In 1913, Perugia, perhaps growing anxious or simply in need of money, attempted to sell the painting to an art dealer in Florence, Italy. Claiming he had stolen the painting to return it to Italy as a patriotic act, Perugia was arrested after the painting was authenticated by experts. His trial was brief, and he received a relatively light sentence, serving just 7 months in jail. Many in Italy regarded him as a hero for his actions, despite the questionable motives that seemed to mix patriotism with a desire for financial gain. There are several theories about why Perugia stole the Mona Lisa. Perugia claimed he was motivated by patriotism, believing the painting should be returned to Italy, but this story has been questioned. Some letters he wrote to his father suggest he hoped to profit significantly from the theft, indicating that money might have been a primary motivator. Another theory, which emerged years later, posits that the theft was masterminded by an Argentine con man, Eduardo de Valfierno, who planned to sell forged copies of the painting. This con man was said to be planning to sell these forged copies as the original many times over, while keeping the missing original. However, this theory is based solely on a 1932 article with no external confirmation. There are also inconsistencies in the accounts of how Perugia stole the painting. While Perugia claimed he simply walked out with the Mona Lisa, some experts have questioned this version of events, finding it hard to believe. Moreover, there are suggestions that Perugia may have had an accomplice, although no solid evidence has ever been presented to confirm this. The return of the Mona Lisa to the Louvre on January 4, 1914, was celebrated worldwide, and the painting's fame skyrocketed. Today, the Mona Lisa is one of the most recognized and visited artworks globally, in large part due to the notoriety it gained from the theft. The painting is now displayed in the Louvre under heavy security, protected by bulletproof glass, a reminder of the many threats it has faced over the years. The Dirawong is a creature from the mythology of the Bundjalung people, an indigenous Australian group from northern New South Wales. Unlike many cryptids, which are often creatures of mystery and fear, the Dirawong occupies a role of protection and guidance within the spiritual and cultural life of the Bundjalung. The Dirawong is commonly depicted as a goanna, a large lizard native to Australia, and is considered both a spiritual and physical being with great spiritual significance. The Dirawong is credited with teaching humans various essential survival skills, including knowledge of bush foods and medicines, cultural practices, and rituals. A central story in Dirawong mythology involves a conflict with another significant figure in Aboriginal mythology, the rainbow serpent. The rainbow serpent is a powerful and often feared entity associated with creation, but also with destruction. According to the mythology, the Dirawong and the rainbow serpent engaged in a cosmic battle that shaped the landscape of the Bundjalung territory. For instance, the serpentine movements of the rainbow serpent are said to have created rivers and other natural features. On the other hand, the Dirawong's actions ensured the protection of the people from the serpent's more destructive tendencies. The Bundjalung people have made significant efforts to protect and preserve the sacred sites associated with the Dirawong, recognizing its importance to the culture. These sites, such as Goanna Headland, also known as the Dirawong Reserve, are unique in that they preserve the territory associated with what could be classified as a cryptid. This was a suggestion from Discord community member Orc Lord Dave. Girolamo Segato. Girolamo Segato was an Italian polymath born in 1792 in the Carthusian monastery of Vedana, located in northern Italy. His interests spanned various fields, including natural sciences, cartography, Egyptology, and anatomy. However, Segato is most famously known for his mysterious and unparalleled technique of artificially petrifying human remains. Segato's journey into the world of mummification began during his archaeological expeditions to Egypt in 1818. These experiences deeply influenced his later work, leading him to develop a method of preservation that went beyond traditional mummification techniques. Upon his return to Florence in 1823, Segato began experimenting with a unique process that effectively mineralized organic tissue, preserving it with remarkable detail and durability. His method allowed the preserved tissues to retain their original color, texture, and even cellular structure, an achievement that was both unprecedented and baffling to his contemporaries. One of the most notable aspects of Segato's work was his ability to turn biological material into a stone-like substance. This process, often referred to as petrification, was so effective that the preserved specimens, ranging from human organs to entire body parts, could be cut, polished, and used in various forms. A table in the royal palace of Caserta, for example, was crafted using this technique and remains a testament to Segato's enigmatic skills. Despite the groundbreaking nature of his work, Segato was highly secretive about his methods. He never documented the exact process, and all of his notes were destroyed before his passing in 1836. This decision has led to widespread speculation about the origins and nature of his technique. Some contemporaries and later commentators speculated that Segato might have tapped into ancient Egyptian magic, a belief that only deepened the mystery surrounding his work. One of the few detailed accounts of Segato's work comes from the American surgeon Valentine Mott, who visited Segato in Florence. Mott was astonished by Segato's ability to petrify organic materials, describing the results as nothing short of miraculous. Mott invited Segato to the United States to demonstrate his process, but Segato initially declined, and then reportedly demanded an exorbitant fee. Soon after, Mott received news that Segato had passed away, taking the secrets of his technique with him to the grave. Segato's legacy is preserved in the remnants of his work that survive today, primarily housed in the Museum of the Department of Anatomy in Florence. His tombstone in the Basilica of Santa Croce bears a poignant inscription that reflects the tragic loss of his knowledge. Quote, "Here lies decayed Girolamo Segato from Belluno, who could have been totally petrified if his art had not died with him." Sulfur was first detected on Mars through various space missions, with NASA's rovers playing a critical role in uncovering its presence. The recent discovery of pure sulfur crystals by the Curiosity rover in 2024 has reignited interest in the element. This accidental find occurred when Curiosity, while navigating the Gades Vallis Channel on Mount Sharp, crushed a rock, revealing bright yellow sulfur crystals. These crystals were found in a region rich with sulfates, which are salts containing sulfur, suggesting a history of evaporating water bodies that left these minerals behind. Mars is known to be a sulfur-rich planet, with the element found in various forms across its surface. This abundance of sulfur has significant implications for understanding Mars' geological processes, particularly its volcanic and hydrothermal activities. Sulfur compounds found in Martian rocks and meteorites point to a time when the planet was geologically active, with volcanoes likely spewing sulfur into the atmosphere. The discovery of sulfur on Mars is not just a curiosity, it's a clue to the planet's past. On Earth, sulfur is often associated with hydrothermal systems, where it is a byproduct of volcanic activity. These environments, such as those found around deep sea hydrothermal vents, are teeming with life, primarily because sulfur compounds can be used as an energy source by certain microorganisms. This has led scientists to hypothesize that similar environments could have existed on ancient Mars, possibly providing the necessary conditions for life. One prevailing theory suggests that Mars had a warm and wet period during the Noachian era, approximately 4.1 to 3.7 billion years ago. During this time, volcanic activity and liquid water were likely prevalent, creating an environment where sulfur could have played a significant role in the planet's chemistry. The presence of sulfur compounds, particularly in the form of sulfates, indicates that Mars may have experienced significant water-related processes. These processes, such as evaporation and precipitation, could have concentrated these minerals in specific areas. Despite these discoveries, many mysteries remain at present. The formation of pure sulfur crystals, like those found by Curiosity, is particularly puzzling. Scientists are still trying to determine the exact processes that led to the formation of these crystals on Mars, with some speculating that ancient hydrothermal systems could be the answer. The role of sulfur in potentially sustaining life on Mars is another area of active research. Studies of terrestrial analogs, Earth environments that resemble conditions on ancient Mars, have shown that sulfur-metabolizing bacteria could thrive in such settings. These microbes use sulfur compounds as an energy source, a process that could have been mirrored on Mars if similar organisms ever existed there. While sulfur alone does not confirm the existence of life, it adds weight to the hypothesis that Mars might have been habitable in the distant past. Some researchers believe that microbial life could have used sulfur compounds to generate energy, much like some bacteria do on Earth today. The Hands Resist Him. The Hands Resist Him is a genuinely creepy painting painted by Bill Stoneham in 1972. The artwork depicts a young boy standing beside a doll-like figure in front of a glass door, with ghostly hands pressing against the glass from the other side. The painting's unsettling nature and mysterious history have led many to believe it is haunted, earning it the nickname eBay's Haunted Painting, after it was listed on the online auction site in 2000. Notably, the painting isn't intended to be scary, despite its clearly disturbing appearance. Bill Stoneham, the artist behind The Hands Resist Him, drew inspiration from an old photograph of himself at age 5, standing with a neighborhood friend in front of a door. The painting's title comes from a poem written by Stoneham's first wife, Roanne Ponseti, which explores themes of hidden identities and subconscious fears. According to Stoneham, the hands in the painting represent other lives or alternate possibilities, while the glass door symbolizes the thin barrier between the conscious and unconscious realms. The doll is intended as a guide to the dream world, adding to the painting's layered symbolism. The painting's reputation as a haunted object began when it was listed on eBay in February 2000. The sellers claimed that the painting was cursed, stating that the figures within it would move during the night and even leave the canvas. These claims were accompanied by photographs, which allegedly captured the doll figure holding some sort of weapon. The listing quickly went viral, attracting over 30,000 views and spawning countless stories and memes. The painting eventually sold for $1,025 to Kim Smith, owner of Perception Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Stories about the painting's supernatural qualities spread rapidly. Some people claim to feel ill or anxious just by viewing images of it online. Others reported strange occurrences, such as fainting or hearing disembodied voices, after encountering the painting in person or on their screens. These accounts have helped cement "The Hands Resist Him" as one of the most infamous haunted objects in internet lore. The dark reputation of the painting brought Stoneham unexpected fame. Over the years, he has created several quote-unquote sequels to the original. These include Resistance at the Threshold from 2004 and Threshold of Revelation from 2012, which further explore the themes and characters introduced in the original work. Stoneham has often expressed surprise at the painting's notoriety and the paranormal interpretations it has inspired, viewing it instead as an exploration of human psychology. Today, "The Hands Resist Him" remains in the possession of the Perception Gallery. Let me know what you think about this painting in the comments. Personally, I find it completely unnerving, and if Bill Stoneham's account is true, it is likely one of the most unintentionally creepy paintings I've ever seen. Peking Man, a crucial discovery in the history of human evolution, was found in the Zhoukoudian cave system near Beijing during the 1920s and 1930s. These fossils, dubbed Peking Man, have become one of the most significant paleoanthropological finds. The first discovery at Zhoukoudian was made in 1921 when a human tooth was unearthed by Austrian paleontologist Otto Zadansky. Further excavations revealed an array of fossils, including skull fragments, jaws, and limb bones, belonging to more than 40 individuals. These remains were eventually classified as Homo erectus pekinensis, a subspecies of Homo erectus that lived roughly between 200 and 800,000 years ago. These fossils showed that Peking Man had a brain capacity smaller than modern humans, but larger than earlier hominids. The Zhoukoudian site yielded over 100,000 stone tools, evidence of fire use, and possible signs of communal living. These findings suggested that Peking Man was a hunter-gatherer with the ability to adapt to the harsh conditions of northern China during the glacial periods. Despite ongoing debates, it is widely believed that these early humans had some form of social structure and were capable of controlling fire. In 1941, with the Japanese invasion of China escalating, there was a growing concern for the safety of the Peking Man fossils. American and Chinese scientists decided to transport the fossils to the United States for safekeeping. They packed the fossils into 2 large crates, which were supposed to be shipped from the Marine base at Qinhuangdao to the U.S. Unfortunately, the crates disappeared en route, and their fate has remained one of the great mysteries in the field of paleoanthropology. Multiple theories have surfaced over the years. One suggests that the crates were lost at sea after the ship transporting them was sunk by a submarine. Another posits that the crates were captured by Japanese soldiers, and the bones either destroyed or lost in the chaos of war. Yet another theory, spurred by an account from the son of a U.S. Marine, suggests that the bones may still be buried beneath a parking lot in Qinhuangdao. The Peking Man fossil's disappearance has led to a slew of investigations, some involving official agencies like the FBI, and others taking more unconventional routes, such as employing psychics. Despite numerous expeditions and studies, the actual location of the fossils remains unknown. The Seabird. The Seabird, often referred to as a ghost ship, was a merchant brig under the command of Captain John Huxham, or perhaps John Durham, as some sources indicate. On an ordinary day in 1750, the Seabird was spotted drifting near Easton's Beach in Rhode Island. Witnesses on shore observed that the ship seemed eerily deserted, with no crew visible on deck. Despite the vessel's perilous proximity to shore, it managed to beach itself gently without sustaining significant damage. Upon boarding, those who investigated the ship found it in an unusual state. A meal was set on the table, a kettle was boiling on the stove, and the ship's log indicated everything had been normal up until that point. Yet there was no sign of the crew, except for a dog and a cat left behind. The disappearance of the crew has been the subject of much speculation. Some theories suggest that the crew might have left the ship in a hurry due to some unforeseen danger, possibly thinking they were close enough to shore to swim to safety. However, the calm weather conditions and the state of the ship suggest that no immediate threat was apparent, leaving the true reason for their departure unknown. Adding to the mystery, there are accounts of the seabird vanishing after it was beached. It is said that shortly after its grounding, a storm hit the area, and when it cleared, the ship was gone, along with any hopes of uncovering what truly happened. This sudden disappearance has fueled the legend of the seabird, turning it into one of the earliest ghost ship stories on the American coast. Another mystery surrounding this story is whether it is indeed just that, a fictional story. Notably, all recovered sources related to this ship come from decades after, and sources do not seem to agree on a number of material facts. This has led skeptics to believe the story may be fictional. The Roman dodecahedron is a mysterious artifact dating back to the 2nd to 5th centuries AD. Over 130 of these objects have been found across Europe, particularly in regions that were part of the Roman Empire, such as modern-day France, Germany, and Britain. Despite their widespread discovery, no historical records or writings mention their existence or purpose, leaving historians and archaeologists to speculate about their use. A Roman dodecahedron is a hollow, 12-sided object, typically made from bronze or other copper alloys. Each of its pentagonal faces has a circular hole in the center, with the size of the holes varying across the faces. Additionally, each vertex of the pentagon is adorned with a small knob. These dodecahedrons range in size, with some being as small as a golf ball, while others are closer to the size of a baseball. Despite their simple appearance, these artifacts were crafted with considerable skill, indicating that they were valued in their time. Theories about their purpose abound, but none have been definitively proven. One popular theory suggests that they were used as surveying instruments, possibly to measure distances or angles. This idea stems from the geometric precision of the objects and the varying sizes of the holes, which some researchers believe could have been used to align with specific objects at a distance. However, the lack of standardization across the dodecahedrons, no two are exactly alike, casts doubt on this theory. Another theory proposes that the dodecahedrons were used as astronomical devices, potentially for determining the best time to plant crops by measuring the angle of sunlight. The holes might have been used to observe the sun's position, functioning as a primitive calendar. This would align with the agricultural needs of the time, but again, there is no concrete evidence to support this hypothesis. Some have speculated that these objects had a more ceremonial or religious purpose, given that many have been found in or near sites that were significant in Roman or Gallo-Roman religious practices, such as temples and other sacred locations. It's possible that they were used in rituals. This theory is bolstered by the elaborate craftsmanship of the dodecahedrons, which suggests that they were more than just utilitarian objects. In more practical terms, some researchers believe that the dodecahedrons could have been used as tools for everyday tasks, such as knitting. One theory suggests that the objects could have been used to create gloves, with the holes guiding the placement of fingers and the knobs holding the yarn in place. While this idea gained some traction after a successful experiment with a 3D printed replica, the theory is limited by the fact that no ancient texts or images support the idea of knitting in this way. Interestingly, the geographical distribution of the dodecahedrons adds another layer to the mystery. None have been found in the heartlands of the Roman Empire, such as Italy, but rather in the outer regions, often where the Romans interacted with other cultures, such as the Celts. This might suggest that the dodecahedrons had a specific cultural significance in these regions, or were used in ways that were not common in other parts of the empire. Howard Menger is known for his extraordinary claims of contact with extraterrestrials, largely of Venusian origin. Born in 1922 in Hunterdon County, New Jersey, Menger's story began when he was just 10 years old. He claimed to have encountered a beautiful blonde woman in the woods near his home, who revealed herself to be a Venusian, an inhabitant of Venus. This was the first of many alleged encounters with extraterrestrials that Menger would report throughout his life. Menger's claims gained widespread attention in the 1950s, during a period when the American public was becoming increasingly fascinated with UFOs and the possibility of alien life. His stories included not just sightings, but also physical encounters with extraterrestrials, who he said were human-like and benevolent. These beings, according to Menger, were concerned with humanity's use of nuclear weapons and the potential for self-destruction, a common theme among UFO contactee narratives of the time. One of the intriguing aspects of Menger's story is his claim of being taken aboard a flying saucer. In August 1956, he reported that he was invited aboard a spacecraft where he was shown alien civilizations on other planets and structures on the moon. Another curious figure associated with Menger is Valiant Thor, who supposedly visited Menger's farm in High Bridge, New Jersey. Valiant Thor claimed to be a Venusian on a mission to prevent nuclear war on Earth. His story was later popularized by Dr. Frank Stranges, who claimed to have met Thor and continued to disseminate his message. Valiant Thor's tale, much like Menger's, is a blend of the mysterious and the fantastical, leaving many to wonder about the truth behind these extraordinary claims. Menger's personal life also intertwined with his extraterrestrial encounters. He met a woman named Connie Weber, whom he believed to be the reincarnation of a Venusian he had known in a previous life. The two married and together became prominent figures on the UFO lecture circuit. They even produced an album titled Authentic Music from Another Planet, which they claimed was inspired by their otherworldly experience. In 1959, Menger published his book, which detailed his experiences and the messages he claimed to have received from his extraterrestrial contacts. However, by 1960, Menger made a surprising move. He recanted many of his claims during a television appearance, stating that he had been part of a government experiment. This experiment, he alleged, was to test public reaction to potential alien contact. This admission cast a shadow of doubt over his previous assertions, but Menger later retracted this recantation, leaving the true nature of his experiences a mystery. Menger's legacy in the UFO community is mixed. To some, he is a charming figure from the golden age of UFO contactees, a man who may have been deluded or deceptive, but nonetheless contributed to the UFO lore. To others, Menger's stories, filled with inconsistencies and recantations, serve as a cautionary tale about the power of belief and the human capacity for self-deception. Despite the skepticism, Menger remained a popular figure until his passing in 2009. Later in his life, he once again began to assert the reality of his experiences, though by that time there was little interest in his claims. Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is a name that has become synonymous with UFO conspiracy theories, particularly those involving the U.S. government's alleged secret research on extraterrestrial technology. His story, first brought to public attention in 1989, has captivated and polarized audiences for decades. Lazar claims to have worked as a physicist on reverse engineering alien spacecraft at a covert site known as S4, near the infamous Area 51. Despite the lack of tangible evidence to support many of his assertions, his narrative has been persistent and, in some cases, eerily consistent with later developments in the UFO disclosure landscape. Lazar first came into the spotlight in a 1989 interview with Las Vegas news reporter George Knapp, where he appeared under the pseudonym Dennis to protect his identity. He claimed that he was employed at a facility called S4, a subsidiary of Area 51, where he worked on alien spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin. According to Lazar, the U.S. government had 9 such craft in its possession, and his job was to reverse engineer their propulsion systems. Specifically, Lazar described a gravity propulsion system powered by a then unknown element, which he referred to as Element 115. This element, later known as moscovium, was synthesized in a Russian lab in 2003, though it does not exhibit the stable properties Lazar described for use in advanced propulsion systems. Notably, while some Lazar supporters indicate his, quote, prediction of this element is significant, the periodic table had already indicated that element 115 would exist. Lazar also detailed the layout of the S4 facility, describing hangars built into the side of a mountain and advanced biometric security measures. Interestingly, this type of scanner was later revealed to have been in use at other top-secret military facilities, lending some credibility to this part of his story. Central to Lazar's claims is the description of the propulsion system used by the alien craft. He explained that the craft was powered by a reactor using element 115, which generated a gravitational field that could be manipulated to allow the craft to move through space without the effects of inertia. According to Lazar, this technology enabled the craft to warp space-time, effectively allowing for faster-than-light travel. Lazar's depiction of the craft's operation, where it would orient its belly towards its destination before accelerating, was initially dismissed as pure science fiction. However, decades later, footage released by the U.S. Department of Defense showed unidentified aerial phenomena exhibiting similar flight characteristics. Believers in Lazar take this as proof that this matches with Lazar's earlier descriptions. Another notable aspect of Lazar's story is his claim to have seen briefing documents detailing historical interactions between Earth and extraterrestrial civilizations. These documents allegedly describe the involvement of a species of gray aliens from the Zeta Reticuli star system, a narrative that has become a cornerstone of many modern UFO conspiracy theories. While Lazar's story has intrigued many, it has also been the subject of intense scrutiny and skepticism. One of the most significant points of contention is Lazar's educational background. Lazar claims to have obtained degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the California Institute of Technology, yet no records exist to verify his attendance at either institution. Additionally, his employment at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which he cites as a credential supporting his work on the S4 project, has similarly been disputed. Los Alamos initially denied he ever worked there at all. However, it was later revealed that he did work there in the capacity as a contractor for a private company. Critics have pointed out that the absence of these records is highly suspicious and undermines his credibility. Lazar, however, maintains that the government has erased his records as part of a cover-up, a claim that is both extraordinary and difficult to prove or disprove. Despite the controversies surrounding him, Bob Lazar's story has had a lasting impact on the public's perception of UFOs and government secrecy. His claims brought unprecedented attention to Area 51, transforming it from an obscure military installation into a focal point for UFO enthusiasts and the general public worldwide. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of interest in Lazar's claims, particularly in the context of the U.S. government's own admissions regarding the study of UFOs. While these admissions do not confirm Lazar's story, they have sparked renewed debate about the possibility that elements of his narrative could be based on truth. Notably, there are additional conspiracy theories about Bob Lazar which assert that he may not be who he claims or appears to be. Some conspiracy theorists argue that he might be a disinformation agent. This theory suggests that Lazar was intentionally provided with a mixture of true and false information by the government to muddy the waters around UFO phenomena. By making outlandish claims that could be easily discredited, Lazar would help discredit genuine UFO research and reports. According to this theory, the purpose of this was thereby to divert public attention from any real extraterrestrial research being conducted by the government. Another theory is that he leaked a mixture of true and false information as a disinformation campaign not aimed at Americans, but rather as disinformation aimed at the Soviets. Further, the reemergence of Bob Lazar in recent years on Joe Rogan's podcast is thought to potentially be a psyop targeting both Russia and China. If you like this video, please do me a huge favor and click the share button and send it to anyone who you think may enjoy it. Remember to like and subscribe and check out the Patreon or YouTube membership to support the channel further.